Alright, let's see if I can share this. Just go into my Facebook. Right, what have I got here? I'll put this tempered glass thing on it, and now come on, now I've got to kind of just to press something, so you know, I need some, anybody who's clued up with these phones. I can't seem to figure out, it doesn't give me any predictive text anymore, so that's really doing my head in. That is, oh come on, for God's sake. Ya salam. Almost done. Almost. Just share that. Na'am la, na'am la. Alright, it's done, it's done. So, people. Alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. Wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa. Wa ala ibadihi alladhina irtada. ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم وأهلا وسهلا بكم bienvenidos a todos. Alright people, Juan Ying Layth, and as always swagatam swagatam. Right, so people, you need change phone. Don't buy Chinese phone anymore. No, that's it's the Samsung S9 I've got, people. The S9. I have to say, it looks super slick. I am impressed. How are you all doing, people? I'm actually in a bit of a rush today, so I got to try to keep the session slightly restricted. Quite a few things on my mind that I'd like to share, though. Whoa, so alright people, those of you tuning in, I want you to click like. I want you all, a todos, I want you all to click share, the share button right there, people. Look at that with the signs. Right, so get this out there. What I'd like to, I'll be touching up, I'll take some questions and stuff. I'll be touching up on a few interesting topics, things like, as well, some advice, inshallah, some nasiha for students of knowledge, and also what is meant by reason. I guess that's an interesting one. And also, I'll be sharing some thoughts on the Shaykh Hasan Ali video and Maulana Yasir Al-Hanafi's as well. So those of you, evening, Andrew, evening. Alright, so those of you just tuning in, click like, click share. Let's get this out there. Harun Head doing it, our Maliki repping it from London. I gotta get the t-shirt. I gotta show the t-shirt. God damn, I haven't got it here, but where it says Malikis do it best, hands down, by courtesy of Harun Head, people. Right, so Ahlan wa sahlan, Rashad. Let's take some questions to get this show on the road, people. To get this show on the road. So I've got to have my hot and cold here, right? So, right. So, check out the ice ball, people. Check out that ice ball. Had to kind of get that. All right, you know that, people. You know that. Right, so what are we? Shall we take some questions? Some have already been submitted. I can take some from there. Es posible, hermanos. Let's take a look. Right, where we at? These phones are jamming too much now, man. See, this is it. As you're old, as like a year's up, or whatever, the phones start to jam. All of a sudden, this must be like some signal that so they want you to get the next one up, which I have got, by the way. But still, I'm just trying to say. Right, so look at that. Doesn't even let me get out of this now. Ya salam. Let's take some questions from here then. Whilst this can... Shaykh Abdul Hameed is getting attacked after that video. Shaykh Abdul Hameed is not getting attacked, people. Shaykh Abdul Hameed is a cage fighting beast. I seriously doubt any of the Maulanas. I think they haven't got their head screwed on if they're going to try to... Oh, come on, for God's sake. No patience left in us. These things have been now built to... Look at that. I don't know, I give up. Let's try this one instead. Try bring up some questions. What is your opinion on the hadith that there will be more women in hell than men? That's not true. There will be more women in hell than men, because if all the women are in hell, then what the hell would the men want to be in heaven for? Let's be honest. It's going to be a bit boring if just men are in heaven, and so we're everybody's like, "You're right, bro. You're right, bro." Just fist bumping each other. Fist bump, touch, touch, respect. Shall we pray again now for the 575th time? Obviously, come on. What kind of a paradise would it be if there weren't, if there were going to be just a few women there? That's the... So, obviously that hadith isn't true. And, you know, the hadith, these kind of hadith have to really be analyzed, and people have to be careful what they keep preaching. You know what it is? That some of these hadith, first of all, right. First of all, this hadith sometimes is misquoted, as is the one about women lacking intellect and stuff like that. And I have highlighted in the past, look, the one about intellect, that was simply said in a context and it was out of humor. That's been misunderstood. Would you consider yourself as an intellectual? I would like to consider myself a theological inheritor of scholars such as Muhammad Abduh, Rashid Rida. That's an interesting question, you know. I want to touch up on that question tonight. What are your thoughts on Gog and Magog? You see, I've become all of a sudden the expert on the end of times. One thing for sure, people, you gotta say, I have single-handedly brought back an entire dialogue to life in the entire Western world, right? And that is the second coming of Jesus amongst Muslims. Every single person speaking on it right now in our recent months is a direct reaction to me. So as I said once before, that you can love me, you can like me, you can hate me, but you will not be able to ignore me. Now they can sit and cry. So it's an interesting thought. That, you know, for God's sake, I've triggered an entire international debate. Wow. Just sitting right here. All thanks to Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. So, right, so it's amazing, but it goes to show that why people are so afraid. Like, there's all this big hoo-ha going on, right? Oh my God, let's not let anybody let nobody go astray with this Jesus belief, the Messiah belief. I mean, what are people on about? They're casting each other to hell every single day. He's going to hell, he's going to hell, he's going to hell. All of a sudden, what have I... See, this is the question. What are they so afraid of? That is the question. That is what people ought to be kind of prodding and digging deeper into. That what are they so afraid of? It's not that they've got this passion for Jesus Christ. What are they so afraid of, the clergy, that I've unearthed here? And the truth is that I've unearthed the fact that beliefs have crept in. And the clergy can no longer control the people. The deen is free from the might of the kind of the clasp that was once practiced by the European ecclesiastic church. These kind of things cannot be practiced today. And it rocks the foundations of people, because there's cognitive dissonance. They've been hearing these stories since they were kids, and the Maulvis try to teach them all these things, that everything we say in these bullet points must be so, and now it gets massively rocked. Nevertheless, let's take a few questions and then we'll jump on to some of the other things. Anything? Is my phone working now, or is it still... Oh, for God's sake, get off here, man. I got a message from one of the Maulanas. I mean, not these Maulanas, the other. And I was trying to play it, and it seems to have frozen on that. So now it's just not... I don't know, maybe if I restart my phone. But at least it hasn't frozen on something. As a kid, when you're watching a movie, and the whole movie's fine, but there's just this one scene in there. And it has to be that scene that your parents will walk in on. And you're like... And for some reason, it'll just freeze. And you're like... You'll be like, oh... and a jutti, a shoe will come flying. All of a sudden, your parents will be like, oh, Ramya. Sorry, that's often a term of endearment used by Pakistani parents for their children. Right, so guys, let's take some questions. It's happened to the best of us, I tell you, it's happened. And you're like thinking, but trust me, the whole movie was fine, it was just this one. Right, okay, suicide is haram. What about women who commit suicide in times of anarchy to protect their honor? Look, I think if people have committed... I wouldn't encourage, obviously, people to commit suicide at all. Even for honor situations like that, I wouldn't personally think... I think that's all a matter of perspective. I understand, but people who do commit suicide, you see, in my understanding, Islam used all this strong rhetoric as a preventative force, so people don't do it. Once post-action and pre-action, there's two different attitudes. Pre-action, the Sharia will be very kind of have this almost like a harsh attitude towards, so as to dissuade people and act very so it doesn't give them, it needs people to always have hope. But post-action, if somebody has committed suicide, the attitude must be one of compassion. Okay. And it must be one of understanding and solace and seeking mercy and helping the family and things like this. This is what the attitude is pre-post. So you see, this is the thing that people don't understand, the wisdom. They think the Sharia is always this kind of robotic thing. It's not like that. It's not like that. So you see, when people would have fought each other, and you have to remember in the time of the Prophet how these fights would have happened, and you know, murder, and they were kind of tribes and warrior tribes. And so the verse says anybody who kills another, because they were believers by that point, most of them, anybody who kills a believer, he will be forever doomed eternally. Khalidan forever in the hell, you know, in the fire of hell forever. But yet that's a clear verse of the Quran. Yet Muslims, we don't believe that. So that is pre-action. Post-action, there's a different attitude. So there's a lot of this in the Sharia sometimes. So we really ought to kind of have this understanding of wisdom, that pre-action, post-action. So women or men who have committed suicide, I think in the past I've commented on this as well. I think it is actually a great philosophical conundrum, really. And I do agree to some extent with Albert Camus, the philosopher, the French existentialist, where he speaks about it is perhaps one of the greatest conundrums and puzzles of philosophy, and that is suicide. And I kind of agree with that. But so I think Muslims ought to have a more compassionate, and that is the Islamic ruling in my understanding. I used to train at, I don't know what that means. I've rolled with Jason. Right, strong deterrent. Okay, come on then. Some of the questions, people. Shall we take some questions? All right. Dr. Brown is of the view that although the traditional view may be very monolithic and devoid of nuance, system we have and going is to open the door for a free-for-all buffet of ideas and practices. Why is that not a good enough reason to go outside the traditional understanding of Islam? You see, people, what makes you think I'm not on the traditional understanding of Islam? I am on the traditional understanding of Islam. It's just because you see me looking a bit modern, that's all. So you're assuming that I'm not on the understanding. That problem lies in your head, not with me. I am on the traditional understanding of Islam. Traditionally, Islam has always told you to be of the time. To be of the time. You have to be of the time. Islam never told us to be of 7th century Arabia. It told us to be of our own time, of our own place. That is the traditional understanding of Islam. I don't know what, when you're saying, for example, Fulan, scholar, or such and such academic, or let's say in this case, Dr. Jonathan Brown. First of all, I don't know exactly the context of what Dr. Jonathan Brown or Ustad Jonathan Brown is saying that, and I do respect him. Now, I don't know what the context to that is, but you see, I think we need to stop having this fear, scaremongering attitude. You know, there's this scaremongering attitude. Oh my God, everything's going to go, everything is going to be destroyed the moment we say you can have things easy in Islam. Oh my God, oh my. And you have to remember that people did this with the Salafis first. So when the Salafi da'wah a few decades ago really started to, with all the, I don't want to say, but with all the cha-ching that was poured into it, when it started to spread like wildfire, so people started to use this scaremongering tactics. Like, oh my God, if you start saying hadith, 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 Quran, hadith, 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 everybody's going to go mad. Everybody's going to go out and buy Bukhari and start going, oh my God, oh, wow, I can do that, really, whoa, I'm off to do that. And the public are going to go crazy, and there's going to be... You have so misunderstood the Muslims. Muslims, oh, you got to be joking. Nobody's going to read Bukhari. Nobody's going to read anything. Relax. I said to people then, like I say now, look, stop scaremongering. If you want to refute the Salafi aspects, refute it properly. Don't do this scaremongering tactic, like, oh my god, the whole deen, now that you say it says in Bukhari, or we've got the hadith, everything's going to go mad and people are going to be picking and choosing, and the moment you say you don't have to follow a madhab, everybody's going to pick this and pick that, and they've got the majmu' of, you know, of Nawawi, and they've got the Mughni of Ibn Qadama, and they've got the Muhalla of Ibn Hazm, and they've got the Istidhkar of Ibn Abdul Bar, and they've got Shawkani's Nail al-Awta, and they're going mad and crazy. Nobody's doing anything like that. Relax. The unfortunate news is nobody cares. I hate to break it to you guys, you know, to these Maulvis that are like so do all this scaremongering. Honestly, I mean, I don't know how to take that as whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, it's unfortunate, but Muslims really don't care. Nobody cares about the deen like this. Religion doesn't actually mean these things to people. Religion is just, like, nobody really cares about all of this. Like, it's all in your head and in your mind. Okay, are fiqh books on mu'amalat out of date? Fiqh books are, what I would say, is out of sync. There needs to be a huge effort to update them, to kind of resync everything. We are out of sync massively. You know, if I open these fiqh books, I mean, they're beautiful and I love collecting them, especially of the school of Medina, right? But the point is, if I was to open them and go beyond worship and maybe some chapters of marriage, divorce, stuff like this, and that's really just the first 1-2 chapters out of 8 chapters, let's say. The rest of it, if I was to read out selections to you, you'd be shocked that what the hell is that even on about? Like, why have we even got that stuff? This is what you'd actually be thinking. It'd be talking about things like transactions, which are so, you know, pre-industrialization, nothing to do with our world. And it'll be talking about how to use words which nobody speaks in that language anymore, let alone those words. And then it'll have the whole justice system, and the penal code is at the end, and that's totally out of sync. And it'll talk about, you know, how you could retaliate with wounds, and is the wound cut to this point, is the flesh, or to the bone, and you can... None of this stuff makes any sense to people. It's totally out of sync. Nothing to do with our world. Why are so deep in blood to our knees from hatred by Muslim to Muslim? We should focus on... I totally agree. I totally agree, Khalil. To get in the past. Nimra saying, I'm happy getting a shout out. Go on, there you go. Nimra, you're doing it, you're doing it. Dawood, what is the concept of Nikah Mut'ah? Nikah Mut'ah is a temporary marriage which self-terminates. So you have it's a self... See, that using that word with Muslims is like... self-destructs. They're like, here she is, but she comes with a contract that self-destructs. Everybody's like, what the hell? That would be an interesting thing for a Muslim, you know, if they wanted to sell the dolls, the sex dolls. That would be an interesting... the contract self-destructs. So, Mut'ah is a temporary marriage, a marriage of pure convenience. It's just basically, to be very... It's past the watershed, so to be very kind of frank about it, it was really just for sex, nothing else, on both sides. Now, Mut'ah generally is deemed haram, generally speaking. It's interesting because it's one of those discussions that became sectarianized when it had nothing to do with sects. It's just the moment the Shia took it up, that's it. Sunnis unleashed the hounds of hell on this mas'ala, and they turned it into something else. In essence, I don't really... You see, many Muslim scholars have traditionally said, they made it very clear that, like Abu Bakr ibn Arabi, Ibn Abdul Bar, all these great legends had said that marriage is not a lifelong process according to Islam. If it works out like that, that's up to the couple. Otherwise, there's no promise that it till death do us part. And even if a person got married with the intention in his mind, let's say, or in her mind, that she wanted out after a while, our marriage is still valid according to Islamic many scholars of Islam, especially a lot of these great legends that are quoted. So, but the difference with mut'ah is that you wouldn't end it, it would just self-terminate. So if we said 24 hours on the clock, then 24 hours when the alarm goes off, it's off. It's like that. And they used to do that in the time of the Prophet, and then the Prophet forbade it. And then he allowed it and then forbade it. And then they say maybe he allowed it again and then forbade it. And so it's interesting. Some of the companions always believed it was permissible. People like Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, although they conflict, they bring some narrations from him saying no, but others say yes. People like Imran ibn Hussein and some of the Sahaba and some of the Tabi'een and stuff like that, they did feel it was permissible. And interestingly, Ibn Taymiyyah's grandfather, I believe, may have kind of gone that way. And the Maliki legend of the last century, the Shaykh al-Islam of his time, the great mujtahid of the 20th century, Ibn Ashur, in his tafsir writes, his understanding is that mut'ah, temporary marriages, are permissible if there was a need for them, like in darura, if there was a kind of like that kind of a need. So you see that diversity there, but generally it's understood. Most people will say no. And in my understanding, I think I don't incline personally so much towards that the strength of mut'ah, because I see that as like self-destructing. To me, doesn't make too much sense. I think if there was an understanding that people themselves, although the concept of if people wanted a relationship based on sexual pleasure, Islam does not forbid that. So if people wanted to do that and they had an understanding, as long as it was a mutual understanding and they weren't kind of just conning each other or deceiving each other, then I think it's up to them. They're adults, nobody else needs to get involved. But they should be allowed to kind of bring it to an end, because maybe they're loving it and they don't want to bring it to an end. So why should it self-terminate? That's why I'm not so sure. But Ibn Ashur does argue for it in his tafsir. So that's interesting. I mean, that's what mut'ah is. Why are leather socks mentioned in Aqeedah books? That's a really good question. Because Aqeedah books of creed, we have to understand something. Creed, the Prophet never bought creed, ever. He never bought Aqeedah. He brought faith. There's a big difference between Iman and Aqeedah. Scholars, the men, they brought creed. Okay, Allah and His Messenger brought Iman. Now, you see, this is why, yes, as I've trained in the traditional sciences, I've trained in traditional creed, I've studied it, I've done things like this, but creed is man-made. Iman is from Allah and His Messenger. So Iman we embrace wholeheartedly. And Allah's Messenger only told us a few things. When in the famous hadith, when he's asked to define what is faith, he says that you believe in Allah, you believe in His messengers, you believe that in wahi, in revelation, in these books, you believe in angels, these means, mediums. And somebody asked me the other day, what are angels? And I said, look, we don't know. These things aren't, Allah never explained what they were. And He never asked you need to know. He just used a term. Now today we might understand them with wings and flying and these with the halo, and that's just all media, stories, narratives, myths. The Quran never defines what they like. So you don't need to know these things. All you understand is something that's very different, that is deployed by Allah. The image you have is based on your culture. And the Prophet said, believe in an afterlife and believe that Allah is ultimately all-powerful. Look how simple and beautiful that Iman is. That was brought to us by our Messenger, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then came men. And they beginning, you know, like people keep quoting Imam Tahawi, who, by the way, Imam Tahawi is not even from the scholars of theology. He's not a theologian. But he's a scholar, unquestionably, but he's not from amongst the mutakallimin. I don't know why they keep they keep bigging up his book. His book is just like a baby's book. But it's just, he wrote this thing with 165 points. That this is creed. See, creed is linked to power. It's linked to the institutionalization of religion. It's linked to when it comes in hundreds of years after the Prophet. At least 200 to 300 years after the Prophet, we're seeing creed is formed. Religion is heavily linked, ties in with many other things, with empire, with expansionism, with stuff like the clergy in themselves become a force to deal with. Who holds the most power, who should be in charge, who can we condemn? See, how can we condemn? For example, people will say, how can you condemn the Shia? People will say, how can you condemn the Shia? You see, because they believe in Allah, His messengers, and these things. They'll say that you believe in these things. This is what the ulama in the past would have said. They would have said, how can we condemn them? So we need a list of rules. And then when we make this creed, anybody who doesn't go by these bullet points, we can condemn them and outcast them. So who gets to make the creed? And who gets to... These are all positions of power. Now, it's very naive to ignore this. And I accept many of them may have been sincere people. And, you know, may Allah reward them for their sincerity. But it's incredibly naive to ignore the power positions at play. Because you have to remember, these people became judges, they became rulers, they became, not rulers like that, but they became judges who, in that day and age, there was no police. So the judges had a certain amount of shurta with them, certain amount of what you might call today police, that they would send to arrest people and stuff. This was a huge position of prestige, a position of power. Right, so, okay, so that's the institutionalization of religion, which I totally cannot stand, and that is what the Prophet warned against when he said, you will do exactly as the Jews and Christians before you. And that is what the Prophet, in my understanding, was talking about, is that you will go on to institutionalize this religion just as they did. People say he was talking about clothes. I mean, get a life. That talk about taking a glorious hadith and dragging it down so low and making it so shallow. Like, for God's sake. Yeah. Please talk about minimum age of marriage in Islam. Okay. Please watch my... I would like to talk about that briefly. Please watch my video on the age of Aisha at the time of her marriage. It's on YouTube. If you just type my name, you can see my channel on YouTube and you can see it there, the age of Aisha. Watch it. Please understand it. It is about 1.5 to 2 hours long. Take the time out and watch it, please. It's got timestamps. We have to understand that in Islam, right, it is haram. Listen to me. Haram to marry children. Okay. Do not be listening to these people who say otherwise. They are snatching the deen from in front of you. These mulvis or imams or these da'is or these people of da'wah are doing nothing but destroying the deen of Islam. Wallahi, they are destroying the deen of Islam. Anybody who tells you it's okay to marry a child, avoid that person like the plague. Okay, it is not okay to marry a child. And it is never been sanctioned by Allah nor His Messenger. These people are lying, attributing a lie to Allah. It says nowhere in the Quran. I've shown in great detail in my clip that one verse they try to refer to where Allah is speaking about women post-divorce. Women, He begins the verse, Allah begins it with women, using the word women and addressing women. Why would He all of a sudden switch to tiny little girls? And He says women and those women who have been divorced, and Allah is addressing them and says that they should wait 3 menstrual cycles in case in case they're pregnant and things like that, and there's other social implications. But he mentions, and those who do not have menstrual cycles, and those who are past the menopause, they can wait 3 months or so on. Now it's interesting, here they try to say where Allah said those who do not have menstrual cycles, He's talking about little girls. You sick, what is wrong with you? Allah is not talking about little girls. Read the tafasir I've quoted in, I quote, what is it, Abu Hayyan, I quote a few other Ibn Atiyya and a few other tafasir in there. They mention this is due to illness. Those women who have irregular cycles or don't have cycles for whatever reason, then they will wait the months, right? And this is why these things were clearly, there were several ulama that did say, Imam Malik in his day and age when he was asked, he said no. He said if a girl, when they asked him when can we marry her, he said she must be nubile. She must be of age. And obviously now look, let's not confuse this discussion with a discussion to do with the age of consent. Does it vary between this year or this year? That is cultural. I accept that. And I accept that, you know, Islam didn't specify a particular age, although many ulama did go with 15 and 18. And the Ottoman Empire in its time did also stipulate anything beneath 15 was illegal in their time and was punishable. So, and they did that based on fiqh, on Hanafi fiqh and the other fiqh of its time. So, yes, these rulings are there, but the age, like whether somebody says 16, 15, 17, 18, 14, these things may vary culturally. I accept that nobody is arguing about that. We're talking about little girls. These things are disgusting. These things, to even entertain that and then to drag in Allah and His Messenger to justify a stupid, sick kind of understanding that you've got, has no place in Islam. No place. And I asked these ulama, you know, these ulama that are, I watched this video, somebody tagged me in a video now of this guy who's always doing da'wah, and many of you have probably watched it, and I don't really want to go into, but this video where he's in Hyde Park Corner, and this is recent, I think it's in the last week or two or something, and he's arguing with, it seems it's a non-Muslim, I don't know, and it's a short clip. It was on some kind of secular thing, or I don't know whether it was a right-wing group or whatever, but somebody tagged me in, so I ended up watching it, and it's about 3 minutes, and the person's asking him that you, and this is, they were asking, this is Ali Dawah. Now I do know Ali Dawah, as in I've met him on a few occasions. Obviously with me he's been very respectful. Now with me he's not really discussed things. This isn't, I don't have anything personal against him. If anything, he's been very respectful when he's met me and he's come to visit me. So I don't have any kind of like, you know, I'm not, people who show me respect, I do show them respect. Okay. So this is in no way against him, and I have that respect for anybody who shows me respect. Now, but I'll be honest with you, when I watch this, this is to do with the things being said. Not him as a person, but the things being said. I was disgusted, okay, and I was really kind of hurt in a way that this is being presented as Islam. And he was being asked that, look, okay, so would you marry your daughter? And he says, yes. He says, if my daughter was 9 years old and a 40-year-old man came and I would ask my daughter, he goes, I would check if she's sexually capable. And in the comments, I mean, in the subtitles, it said, we don't know how he would check. Obviously, that is an absurd statement. I'll check if she's sexual. I don't know what that means either. I'll check if my daughter's sexually capable at the age of 9. I mean, but anyway, it's because the person then says, let's say hypothetically she is capable. The person says that to him and he says, yeah, I'll ask her, are you sure you want to marry this 40-year-old? And if she says yeah, then I'll say Alhamdulillah. You know, well, look, as a person, I think that, you know, and this Ali Dawah, as far as what I can recall him telling me, he's a convert to Islam. He told me ages ago, you know, when he first met me. honestly, I feel sorry for the understanding of Islam that you've been, I think, brainwashed into, or you've been bombarded with, right? This, wallahi, is an abomination to Islam. And then what really hurt me, I don't know whether he said this in his right mind or he said it accidentally, but the fact that it's recorded, he went on to say, look, we don't have an age of consent in Islam, which that's not the problem. Because you could say if these things vary, whether it's 15, 18, whatever in culture. But he says, he follows on by saying, we don't have an age of consent in Islam. Girl can, as long as the girl's sexually active, he puts that clause in, like sexually capable, I think he says. And then he says, whether she's 9, 5 or 4. I honestly was, I was just shocked. That what on... I've got no words. What do you mean sexually capable 5'4"? How on earth could you even... Like, those sentences don't go together. Like, these things... I'm out for words. Wallahi, I'm out for words. And I would plead with the ulama that... I would plead with the ulama that these ulama who have come out to attack me, you know, all these ulama that have become so passionate about the second coming of Jesus Christ, you know, peace and blessings be upon him all of a sudden, more passionate than the Christians, right? So now I would plead with them that will they please turn their focus, by all means, keep it on Jesus Christ and I'll engage you, that's fine. But will they turn their focus to these ideas, please? Will they condemn these ideas? Will they say that these things are unacceptable in Islam? Look, let me tell you something, people. Each society has a characteristic or certain types, archetypes that they hate. There was wisdom, why Allah sent the messenger of Allah. He sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam from who he was from. He was from Mudar, then from Kinana, from Quraysh, from, you know, the best of these tribes, from amongst them, selected from Bani Hashim. Why did he have, Allah could have chosen him to be from any, just a secondary, tertiary, low tribe. But that's not how society works. Society sees status. The Prophet was seen from a very noble tribe amongst people. And people had, that impacted them. Even though social status is man-made, it's not from God. But Allah knows that, look, this is going to make the difference. In our societies, look, in all societies, murder, robbery, these kind of things are hated everywhere. People don't like, obviously, murderers and things like this. But in this society, everybody hates rapists. They hate pedophiles. Now, you have to understand what you are doing. You as Muslims are placing the messenger of Allah, who is the best of creation, and portraying him as a pedophile. What are you doing? Why are you doing these things? First of all, that is wrong. It is a lie. That one narration, this one sole narration they bring, right, which Bukhari brings, and accidentally, you know, Bukhari, may Allah have mercy on him, obviously, he wasn't a prophet of God. And I've shown in my whole detailed video how that was unacceptable. This one narration, and it clashes with so many other narrations. But he brings this, and then these people, they happily endorse this. They say, yes, so this is our tradition. You don't understand. Look, people hate, they abhor pedophiles in this part of the world. And I think rightfully so. So why would you get who we think is the best of creation and put him in this list? So strongly urge, and these people who keep saying to me, you know, this is a modern, this guy follows his desires, this guy does this guy is destroying Islam. I ask you to kind of challenge these issues, to portray Islam in the true light. So that's right. It is in other books, you're right. It's in Sahih Muslim, which makes it even worse and reduces her age to 6. You're right. Who's that? Dow Jones. In Muslim makes it even worse. It puts it down to the age of 6 that the Prophet married her, and all this kind of disgusting stuff which clashes with all the other hadith in Bukhari. By the way, the hadith is still the same hadith. It's to do with Aisha from her nephew and so on. It's the same hadith, but it's got different wordings and stuff like this. Now, so that's, and there's other issues. Look, challenge these issues. I urge these people, look, listen, did you know these people will say, these people then say there's ijma, you can do this kind of stuff. To hell with that ijma. There is no ijma on this. They'll say there's consensus. These people, I ask these people to challenge these issues. Do you know in these books, they will find that scholars say Allah facilitated slavery. They will say this. In these books, all these scholars, because they lived in a time when it was normal. So they will just justify it using religion. Say, yeah, Allah facilitated slavery. Slavery's got blessings in it. Blah, 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 blah. Would you say that today? There's ijma. They'll say there's ijma that Allah facilitated and allowed slavery to happen and so on. No, because we live in an age where these things have changed. These things are forbidden in Islam. They are haram. And I've explained this before. You can watch my clip on trajectory hermeneutics and how with the coming of time these things would have been forbidden. So you can watch that there. Now, somebody's asked a question, was Ibn Hajar uncomfortable with the hadiths in Bukhari? Well, the last time I checked, Ibn Hajar wasn't the person we worship. Ibn Hajar. You know, these two, they're great muhaddithin. Ibn Salah, right, and Ibn Hajar, right. Ibn Hajar goes on to get influenced by Ibn Salah. Their hadithi methodology created havoc, which we are still trying to recover from. And, you know, may Allah have mercy on them and bless them. They did things, they were great scholars in their own right. In their own right. I'm not denying their academics. I'm not denying their capacity. They memorized so many hadith. They great people like this. They were Shafi'i, so they were already very dogmatists when it came to hadith. But what they did, by the way, they brought this mutawatir thing into hadith. Before them, Ibn Salah brings this in. This wasn't even a discussion to do with the science of hadith. Ibn Salah brings this in. And then Ibn Hajar kind of cements it. You see, I don't care if Ibn Hajar doesn't accept it. Ibn Hajar also accepts the hadith of satanic verses. Did you know that? Ibn Hajar says the hadith of that the Prophet added to the Quran the satanic verses. He says, yeah, that's kind of okay. It's a Hasan hadith. Well, what the hell is that all about? He says the hadith that the Prophet made up verses of the Quran. The verses in Surah Najm that after Allah condemns Lat and Manat and Uzza, when Allah says Wallat wal Uzza wa Manat al-Thalithat al-Ukhra, that these three gods, the narration say that the Prophet then added the verses Tilka al-Gharaniq al-Ula, those major entities, wa inna shafa'atahunna la turtaja. These two things I've just read are not part of the Quran. These are the satanic verses. That indeed the intercession of these deities will be sought after in the Day of Judgment. That the Prophet said this, they say, to kind of please and appease the kuffar of Quraysh. That they say these two verses were added into, the Prophet read them. They weren't added into the Quran, but he read them in front of the kuffar of Quraysh, and they all fell into prostration. This is referred to as the satanic verses. This Qadi Iyad and all these great scholars condemn the hell out of these narrations as pure fabrications, which they were. No such thing. And then comes Ibn Hajar much after them and says, actually, they're okay. When we look at their sanad, they're Hasan. They're acceptable. What the hell are you on about? They're acceptable. You see, nobody is above Allah and His Messenger. Allah and His Messenger. Nobody. Imam Malik taught you that clearly. That everybody you reject what they have to say, except the Messenger. So, if anybody comes to you with these kind of narrations, if Ibn Hajar is saying something, Ibn Hajar says, oh, it's okay to marry a child because we think that... No, it's not okay. Right? You might think it's okay. People might say, oh, would you condemn Ibn Hajar? Look, I'm not here to condemn people. I'm here to just criticize these ideas. Okay? They were people who lived in a time where they did whatever the world did, but we're not in their time. So that's important to kind of clarify these things. And I hope people will challenge these ideas. There's also the concept, by the way, that the blood money of a woman, and I'll go into this in much more detail in a future show, that future episode, that they say the blood money of a woman is half the blood money of a man. And you know, they claim their ijma on all of this. It's nonsense. Nonsense. They base it on weak, da'if hadith. Da'if hadith they base it on. And the Sahih hadith says that al-mu'minun, al-muslimun tatakafa'u dima'uhum. That Allah was, the Prophet was obviously speaking to the people in front of him, speaking to the believers. He said their blood is equal. Equal. He never said a woman is less than a man. Yet in all these books they will say that there's ijma on this. They will say we accept that a woman only, her blood money is only worth half of a man. And this has nothing to do with inheritance. This is to do with the blood money. This is there's no verse in the Quran to do with this, speaking about the men, women, whatever, blood money. This is in a hadith, a weak hadith, da'if hadith, that they've based this on. So when you hear scholars throwing around terms like ijma, consensus, be wary, because when they use these terms, it's usually because they lack evidence in something and they're trying to exert control. So it's important that they challenge these things today, that this is not true, that all Muslim, male or female, their blood money is the same. Right? And blood money was to do with accidental death. It was compensation. So if you did something, let's say you, I don't know, in the past you accidentally killed somebody, you would have to pay compensation. So they would say for a woman you pay half of what you pay for a man. You see, opinions, it's their opinions, but don't attribute this to Allah and His Messenger. Okay, so that's what I say. Right, so okay, I hope some people are saying that they can't see the transmission. I hope you guys can see it. Is that okay? The inheritance, I'm going to mention something to do with inheritance. You know, that there's a famous scholar. Today they've made this inheritance thing into a big deal, right? Like, once again, in the past there was a Maliki legend. I'll inshallah in the future go through some works dedicated to his book. His name was Ibn Ardun. Okay, and he's actually, you know, I've spoken about Imam Burzuli, the great Maliki legend who said that the capital punishments would change in his day and age. He was from like the 800s going into maybe 900s, like that. So 800 Hijri, yes. So he was in the 9th century, not going into 900, 800 Hijri. Now, so the 9th century of Hijrah. Now, this Ibn Ardun is actually like one of his future, from his generation, from his daughter's line. So from his daughter's, I think, grandchild or something. And he is also a great faqih in Islam. A very great Maliki don. And his name is Ibn Ardun. And I'll go through this his thing in much more detail in the future at some point. But he had an issue. He had a fatwa which he passed, a ruling in his day and age to do with inheritance. It was to do with the wife. Now, you know, the wife can only inherit a certain amount. Okay, so whether she's going to get a fourth, or whether she'll get an eighth, stuff like this, depending on how many wives there are and stuff like this. So the wife would only get a certain fraction, and the children most likely would get more than the wife, and the father would inherit, and the mother would inherit, and all this kind of stuff, but the wife would get less. Okay, so whether, depending on the whole context of who's involved, but she would get, whether it's going to be an eighth or, you know, how many there are, or a fourth, or whatever these fractions will add up to in her situation, depending on how many family members are involved and stuff. But Ibn Ardun, in his time, passed a ruling, and he was a great Maliki legend. He said, and this ruling became known as Al-Kadwa Si'aya. He said that, look, this woman who spent a great portion of her life with this man, he said that she would have helped him to achieve whatever he achieved. Even if she didn't physically help, but she would have been doing things like taking care of the kids, or in many of these cases in the past, she would have physically helped. Because even today, in the rural part of the Muslim world, women actually work in the fields. They go, they take the crops, they kind of sift through them, organize them, do all of these things. So he said that this woman, kad and si'aya means your hard work. And he said the hard work this woman has put in during her lifetime, he said that this is not fair. So he passed a ruling, and this ruling still exists in the Maliki madhab today. He said that the wife would inherit 50% of everything before the inheritance is even split. So she would get half, and then from the inheritance she would get her own allocated portion too. So the inheritance, then everybody can get their portion, and she can claim her portion from the inheritance. So she would get 50% of everything before there's any division of any assets or anything. Now just look at that, subhanallah. That now, was he deemed a modernist? He was at least over 400 years ago. He's deemed a great Maliki scholar of his age. Right now, I totally agree with that. I agree with his ruling, totally. Now, what I'm trying to say is that, was he deemed, you know, people say, oh, you know, you're making these things. How are we making these things exist? These scholars looked at it and they said, in our day and age, things are different. So we need to put, so they said we need to kind of make sure things reflect our own day and age. So, okay, so that's enough of, and there has been recently as well in Tunis, they've got what they call the Diwan al-Ifta, which is their main kind of central body of giving fatwa, which last year gave the fatwa that they felt men and women, boys and girls, are equal in inheritance. And they are Maliki in fiqh. People criticize them because they said, oh, they did this to please the government or whatever. But they've got justifications. They've got Quranic verses and things like this, and they show, and they've passed that fatwa. The fatwa does exist, and that is now part of the law within Tunisia, which is a Maliki. It's run by Maliki principles in that sense. So, okay. Now, right, so let's move on, people. Let's move on. What other things are we looking at? Any questions? So that's right. Okay, I wanted to also touch up on. I'll give some reflections. I'll try not to take too long on this point. I'll give some reflections on the video made by Shaykh Hasan Ali, if I can get this to open. That is. Because I had his points written down. So now, first of all, this is my just my reflections on Shaykh Hasan Ali's video. Now, Shaykh Hasan Ali, who spoke about the second coming of Jesus, he made a kind of Facebook live, and he said he spoke about this. Now, I want to highlight that I actually I do have great respect for Shaykh Hasan Ali. I see him as a kind of senior in age in that sense, in respect. I've met him personally on a few occasions. We've disagreed in the past as well on other issues. We've disagreed respectfully. Okay, so I remember many years back we had this whole discussion on jinn possession and stuff like this. We disagreed, one could say with zeal, but still respectfully, he still showed me a lot of respect. Look, I don't know what's in people's hearts, but I just go with the apparent. Okay, so in that sense, what I saw from him was love and respect, and he visited after that. I once drove him around, and you know, went recently, was it last year or the year before, when Shaykh Yasir Qadi came to London, so I went down, and he was there with me that time. He met me, we had a discussion, a brief discussion with Shaykh Yasir Qadi as well. He was there as well, Shaykh Hasan Ali, and even afterwards, you know, we went to get food, very respectful, asked me to sit next to him, stuff like this, discussed with me. So I have respect for Shaykh Hasan Ali. I watched his video where he was refuting and speaking about, but once again, you know, he wasn't disrespectful. And so in that sense, I have a policy: as long as somebody's respectful to me, I will always be respectful back to them. So just some points on what he said. He brought forward a few points. You see, there was more transparency with Shaykh Hasan Ali. So he made a point very clear in saying that, look, this thing of the second coming of Jesus cannot be clearly proven from the Quran. So let's focus on the hadith. I like that, because at least that was an honest step. And you know, and that's the truth. So, okay. He highlights that, look, he goes through several hadith, and he mentions hadith, and he says that, look, look, the majority of the Muslims believe that Jesus is coming back. I accept that the majority of the Muslims do believe it, but they believe it because they've been told it as stories since they were kids. Majority of the Muslims believe Ya'juj and Ma'juj have these very long ears which they go to sleep in, and they're these kind of like critter, like, I don't know, like gremlin like creatures, and most of the Muslims believe that. It doesn't make it true. There's no Sahih hadith to prove stuff like that this is what Ya'juj Ma'juj look like, these kind of gremlins with long ears, and they put one over them when they go to sleep, and they put the other one underneath them, and you know, all these kind of things, these stories that I heard as a child, and we all heard. Just because probably over 90% of Muslims probably believe that about Ya'juj and Ma'juj, it doesn't make it true. So just because Muslims believe it, but that's more so to do with them just being indoctrinated by it whilst they were young. Indoctrinated is a strong word, but they were kind of taught this mythology. He says that, look, this does come in a hadith. He quotes several hadith. Right, I'm just trying to go through some of his points here. Now, the thing is, I'm not denying that these things don't come in hadith. My angle, if you watch my prelude, I would advise, if Shaykh Hasan Ali does watch this, then Shaykh, shukran for your response, first of all. And secondly, I would advise, if you do have some time, I know you're a busy person, but if you take out some time and watch my prelude video, it is on YouTube, and I explain why this is a narrative in crisis. It's not to do with the fact, is there a hadith? I know there's plenty of hadith, but the hadith have problems, and it's not just, and I will in time to come in my detailed video in the future, which will be like a course-like video, so I will dedicate several hours to everything. In that video I will show the isnadi problems, but this is more than just isnad. The issue here is that the details inside these hadith clash with Islam. Stuff like Jesus will force people to become Muslim. Jesus, when he comes, he will seal the deal. There will be no more evil left on the earth. He will be a judge. He will, you know, animals will become vegetarians. He will break the, you know, these kind of things don't make any sense. And then I understand Shaykh Hasan Ali said these things may be like metaphor. But then the whole thing could be a metaphor, one could argue. You know, if you're saying everything, you know, the breaking of the cross is a metaphor, the killing of the pig is a metaphor, the evil disappearing is a metaphor, if you say the animals becoming vegetarian are a metaphor, if you say, you know, if you're saying everything is a metaphor, that, oh, he will force people to become Muslim is a metaphor, then why is Jesus the only non-metaphor in that? So it doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now, you see, he highlights, I think Shaykh Hasan Ali highlights that, look, all scholars have had minority opinions. This is interesting, you see, because what Shaykh doesn't see here, minority, majority, he says that show me a scholar in the past who had just rare opinions. There's many. Let's begin with Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa in his own day and age was seen as an absolute deviant by people. This is just a fact. You just need to read their comments on him. Why? Because he had isolated opinions from everybody. If you see Ibn Hazm or other people transmitting from Abu Hanifa, they say, oh, this, they'll say, he said this, وَلَمْ يَقُلْ بِهِ أَحَدٌ مِّن قَبْلَهُ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ. Nobody before him in Islam had ever said that statement. On so many statements, Abu Hanifa said that. He had his own ruling, his own ijtihad. Look, like, up until the time of Abu Hanifa, everybody believed that zakat would be given, like let's say sadaqatul fitr or zakat. You couldn't give it in money, you would give it from the actual thing, the actual, you would, obviously zakat in money would be given of money, but other things, like let's say you've got sadaqatul zakatul fitr or other kind of things, they must be given from, let's say, wheat or, the actual kind of staple diet. Imam Abu Hanifa said, no, you can give money, because money, at the end of the day, it's the objective. He went against the absolute reading and the consensus of all the ulama and all the Sahaba before him, but it didn't matter, because he said, look, at the end of the day, Islam is trying to help the poor. What better way to help them than to give them money, because they can use it for their own needs. You see, not so many things. Imam Abu Hanifa was the first. But yes, just because today his views have become a majority in several parts of the world, but that's to do with time, that's to do with power, positions, following, politics, sectarianism. It's to do with a lot of things. It's to do with the fact that his student Abu Yusuf becomes the supreme judge of the Muslim world and spreads the Hanafi madhab like wildfire, because he would only appoint a judge if the judge was Hanafi. So you're telling me that didn't play a role in the Hanafi madhab becoming accepted? If you read the statements of the Imams about Abu Hanifa when he died, you will be shocked. Read what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal had to say about him. Read what Sufyan al-Thawri, his contemporary, had to say about him. They really spiteful words. They were like, they weren't, all this they show you in these lectures, this nice and loving and lovey-dovey. They weren't like, they had that side at times, but read their words, read the criticism of Abu Hanifa by these great scholars. They rip him to shreds. They're really harsh and almost vulgar almost towards him. They speak of him like, they say, when he died, people were like, thank God that deviant has died. They were like really, really bitter towards him. So this is, right, so when he's saying, Shaykh Hasan Ali says, yeah, that scholars had a minority opinion at times. This minority majority is deemed by later people. It's not deemed by the people at the time. Because this is a power position. You see, you can't say, oh, look, looking back, that was a minority position, because that could have been a majority position if it took off. Let's say the Shia became the majority of the Muslims, then Sunnis would be deemed as deviants and a minority. If the Shia today were outnumbered the Sunnis, we would just be seen as like a deviant sect. And they would be seen as mainstream Muslims. So it's not, these are power positions. This isn't like something which, like, I'm not trying to say I don't disagree with the Shia. I do disagree with the Shia on their points. But what I'm trying to say is who deems who to be the majority minority is to do with how politics plays out and how power positions play out over era, over time. So he asks a question, Shaykh Hasan Ali, did the Prophet say these things? I don't believe the Prophet said these things about Jesus coming back. I honestly don't. Now, yes, you've got plenty of hadith. But tell me something. Why are 80% almost of these hadith only through Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu? Did you know that? That almost 80% of all these hadith to do with Jesus coming back are just through Abu Hurairah. So you know when they say we've got so many hadith, they're just all going through Abu Hurairah. And about 50% of them are just going through one person, Ibn Shihab Zuhri. So you know when they keep saying we've got so many tens and tens, oh I can't stop counting, got hundreds, it's the same thing. They're just going through the same person. And I will show in my detailed video. Did you know things? Look guys, here's an interesting point. Did you know, because we all know Abu Hurairah used to learn a lot from converts. He used to learn from Ka'b al-Ahbar. He used to learn from Abdullah ibn Salam. To the extent, and he used to think so highly of the Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh spent a whole day at Mount Sinai. He travelled there and he studied with Ka'b al-Ahbar. He says in the hadith, he was teaching me from the Torah. I was teaching him what the Prophet used to say. Did you know there's a hadith? Check this hadith out, people. There's a hadith that Abu Hurairah transmits from this one. I believe it's in Sahih Muslim as well, but or it might, sorry, this one might be in Musnad of Ahmad. But I mean, the chain at this stage is irrelevant. But it's from Abu Hurairah to the Prophet, saying that the most harsh of my ummah against the Dajjal will be Bani Tamim, the tribe of Tamim. That because Bani Tamim was seen as like kind of hard knocks back in the day. So they used to kind of have this thing about them that we're kind of hard knocks and stuff. And you know, in that famous poem, the guy says, وَعِزُّ النَّاسِ تَمَّ إِلَى تَمِيمِ. Dons, huh? It goes in the might of the people, it kind of completes with Tamim, because Tamma means to complete, and Tamim comes from the word Tamma. So it says, وَعِزُّ النَّاسِ تَمَّ إِلَى تَمِيمِ. And that's part of the poem. And so the thing is that, look, they had this thing that they used to think we're dons and they're really strong and stuff. So this Abu Hurairah says, I heard the Prophet say this, and this is in the books of hadith, that they will be the strongest in fighting the Dajjal. Yet, naughty, the same hadith, this thing is transmitted in the other books of hadith with a chain going back to Ka'b al-Ahbar. Ka'b, who was the converted to Islam. Not as a saying of the Prophet, as his saying. He says, you know, I like from the Arabs, I like Tamim, Bani Tamim. And he says that, you know, Bani Tamim, they will be the harshest against the Dajjal. You see, and you have to remember, Abu Hurairah used to sit and he would teach hadith non-stop like this, like Sardul Hadith, they call this in Arabic. Sardul Hadith. He would just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he would talk as well. Maybe the people writing it from him would think everything he's saying is from the Prophet. Maybe the people from them would think that. I'll tell you another one, guys. This one is going to shock you. You waiting for this? You naughty, right? Check this out. You know the famous hadith about that there will be women who are dressed yet naked, and you know this famous hadith, everybody's heard it, right? And that they will be in the hellfire, and they will Jannah, paradise will be forbidden for them, and you can smell paradise from 500 years of a journey or something. Very famous hadith, right? So this hadith is in Sahih Muslim from Abu Hurairah, that he heard the Prophet say. He heard the Prophet say that there will come a people, men who will hold on to like the tails of cows, right? And women who will be dressed yet naked, and they will be from the hellfire, and Jannah will be forbidden for them, even though you could smell it from whatever. Now Imam Malik, you see, Imam Malik is a don, people. He brings this hadith in the Mu'atta, but he stops it on Abu Hurairah. Now people don't realize the wisdom in what Imam Malik was doing. They think, oh, he brought this as a hadith. He brings it and stops it as a statement of Abu Hurairah. Now people say, yeah, but this sounds like a hadith. Now it does. Until you find in the other books of hadith, like I believe Ibn Abi Shayba and other people have brought the hadith with the chain going back to Ka'b al-Ahbar. Ka'b, this convert, who, by the way, doesn't convert in the Prophet's time. He was around in the Prophet's time, but converts in Umar's time. The chain goes back to him. He begins by saying, and I read in the Torah that, and then the exact same wording of the hadith, that a time will come when men will hold on to the tails of cows and women will be dressed yet naked and Jannah will be forbidden for them and you can smell Jannah from 500 years. From the Torah, he says, not from Allah and His Messenger. So look, people, yes, there's hadith. I know there's hadith, but these hadith, 80% of them are just coming through Abu Hurairah. Where are the great companions? Where is Abu Bakr? Where is Umar? Do you know there's not a single hadith about Jesus coming from Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, Uthman, any of these people? Are you telling me the great companions never knew the Aqeedah? Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu comes to Islam in just 3 years before the Prophet passes away. Yes, he spends time with the Prophet. Yes, and he mass transmits. He non-stop transmits. And Umar radiallahu anhu told him off. Said, you know what? He's actually said, I'm going to beat you if I see you continuously transmitting like this. Because he says, you say things which I've got no idea. Where did you get this stuff from? And he himself admits learning from other people. Now, I'm not saying whether the mistake was from him or whether it's from people after him who are listening to him saying 10 things or 20 hadith. Sorry, not hadith. Let's say there's 20 things that he's teaching and they think all of them are from the Prophet, but maybe 2 of them weren't. 2 of them he picked up from Ka'b al-Ahbar or from Abdullah ibn Salam or from other people, but the people writing it just write them all as one. So anyway, I hope that makes kind of sense. Now, the other thing that Shaykh Hasan Ali mentions, he mentioned some principles. I'm going to skip some of these to go into, I think it's worth discussing his principles. He says, I would like to, fair play to him though, he said about ijma and stuff, this kind of stuff is always debated and mutawatir. He does make a point in saying he feels that in mutawatir, any hadith can be made into Aqeedah. To correct the Shaykh, that according to the Ash'aris and the Maturidis who make up the bulk of the Sunni Muslims, that is not true. Okay, only firmly established hadith, like so many, what they do call mutawatir. You know, this discussion of mutawatir was actually an Aqeedah discussion first. It had nothing to do with hadith. It was Ibn Salah who kind of brings it into hadith. But these people, it was nothing to do with hadith initially. It was to do with usul al-fiqh and usul of Aqeedah. Right, so he says that they don't have to be mutawatir. That's not true. According to the majority of the scholars, they do have to be mutawatir. So just to correct the Shaykh, that might be his opinion. I respect that, but that's not the madhab he represents. Like the Hanafi madhab, that's not the Hanafi madhab. Right, so right, he highlights 7 or so arguments which he can sum up. He asks, look, if you reject a hadith in Bukhari, will you be consistent? Of course I will. I'll be consistent in rejecting. And he asks, what is your principles? Look, my principles are simple. I'll highlight them. To see if a hadith is valid, you check the chain. Once that's fine, then 3. These are the principles right here. As they're in the books of hadith, by the way. These are in the Mustalah al-Hadith by Ibn Hazm, by Ibn al-Jawzi, even Tadrib al-Rawi, Sayyuti. They all mention these things. That it cannot go against reason, number 1. They actually put it as number 1. It cannot go against the established Quran and Sunnah. And it cannot uproot a principle of Islam. That's my principle. I'll happily share my principles with you. He asked that, what are the principles and methodology? There you go, that's my methodology. And if any hadith clashes with these things, it's unacceptable. Unacceptable. He said, would you allow other people to do this? Of course. As to the common lay people, look, as I've said before in my dialogue in my lecture on the age of Aisha, common people don't understand, like they haven't studied this science. So I would say to them, if they're confused about hadith, they should speak to scholars. But if it bothers them that they feel that this hadith goes against Islam for them, in their understanding, then I would say it's safe for you to not practice that hadith. Even if you haven't consulted, but if you felt it went against your understanding of Islam, you can suspend it. right? That's absolutely fine. And then you can seek guidance on it and you can seek clarification. Nothing wrong with that. So if you found a hadith, for example, saying, you know, like let's say that you found a hadith about, I don't know, something saying you can kill yourself or you can do this, or you think, I don't think, my understanding of Islam doesn't allow that. Or you find this hadith that says, oh, every time you kill a lizard, a gecko, you get all these rewards, which is in Bukhari, and by the way, and in, I believe it's in Muslim as well. But it's, so every time you kill a lizard, you get all these rewards. And that hadith makes no sense, okay, because the hadith says the reason you kill them is because the gecko, the small lizard, blew into the fire of Ibrahim alayhi salam to kind of make it heated up. You think, come on. So what would one lizard do to the fire of Ibrahim alayhi salam? And even if you did want to kill that lizard, why are you killing all these lizards? Like, I doubt it these lizards did that. And I doubt it lizards are conscious beings. Like, they don't plan and think, I'm going to get you back. Like, so why are you killing lizards? And it says if you kill the lizard in the one go, you get 100 rewards. And if you kill it in 2 goes, you get like, I think 50 or something. And if you kill it in 3 goes, you get 10 or something. It mentions this. That hadith is made up. There's no way on earth that is a hadith. Right, so, and then this thing, you see, another thing, Shaykh Hasan Ali, part of his argument was scaremongering. Now, I get this, a lot of Maulanas do this. This is nothing personal to Shaykh Hasan Ali, who I mentioned I have great respect for. But this is just part of the trend of that Maulana trend. You see, to get the masses, they try to intimidate them. You know, how will you be on the day of judgment when you rise up amongst these people? And, you know, would you, like, you know, this kind of scaremongering, the whole deen, like if you doubt hadith, if you doubt this hadith today, tomorrow you'll doubt the Quran, watch. Like these kind of things, you're scaring people. But that's not true, because look, I could show you these hadith, like let's say I showed you this gecko hadith, which is sahih. And let's say people saying, oh, you can marry a little girl because it's in Bukhari. Oh, if you deny that, then tomorrow you're going to deny the Quran. No. I could show you a hadith in Sahih Muslim that is insulting, I think, to the Prophet and to Ali. That the Prophet sent Ali to go murder somebody because the Prophet thought he was having an affair with one of his own. Apparently, according to this narration, the Prophet's slave girl, who wasn't his slave girl, was his wife. But they say his slave girl, so he wanted to kill her cousin. And then when Ali goes there, he finds out the person doesn't even have the male genitalia. Like, the person's having a bath, he gets up, he doesn't even have a private, but it's been unfortunately cut. So how could have he had an affair? So Ali kind of leaves him and says, oh, comes back and tells the Prophet, and the Prophet just says, oh, okay. What on earth is that? What on earth is that? That's utter garbage, utter rubbish. It's blasphemy. So you're telling me if people reject that today, tomorrow they're going to reject the Quran? No, of course not. They need to reject stuff like that. So Bukhari, Muslim, these are not the word of God. So I think, look, this scaremongering thing that, oh, on the day of judgment, what will you do, or where will you be, and stuff like this. Do you want to rise up tomorrow with these people or rise up with those people? Look, relax. None of this day of judgment business, right? Look, everybody is trying to attain the truth. Everybody is trying to attain the truth. So I think that kind of stuff is just scaremongering, which a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of imams do that. Okay. And fair enough. Look, Shaykh Hasan Ali said it's his belief that Jesus will come. That's fine. That's his belief. I mean, Jesus isn't going to come, but if you want to believe in it, that's fine. You know, it's your situation. I don't have a problem with that. I'm just showing. And he did say that, look, this is a debate about principles. And once again, that once you open up this can of worms of questioning beliefs, everything is going to fall to pieces. I think that's because of your lack of faith in our deen. That this deen is much stronger than that. By removing cobwebs, the deen is not going to fall apart. And I can guarantee you this deen is not going to fall apart. Right? So I think that this kind of scaremongering, that look, if we question this today, then tomorrow all of Islam is going to show up as weak. then that's, I think you've got a low opinion of Islam. If not the Shaykh, but anybody who thinks that, I think they've got a low opinion of Islam. Right, so I think you need to question things. Of course you need to question things. Otherwise anybody's going to get anything past you. Somebody asked today, why are wiping the socks part of Aqeedah, creed? That's because the Shia don't do it. So they just want to get back at the Shia by saying, let's do this. So really, it's got nothing to do with creed. Nothing to do with creed. But yet they've put it in the books of creed just to distinguish themselves from other groups. Right, so that was my response to Shaykh Hasan Ali. So, you know, Jazakallah al-Khair, Shaykh, for making that video. May Allah bless you. And there was a little, you see, I did want to say that, look, one point, that look, at the end of the day, we are all Muslims. We are all part of the majority, the Sunni thing. And I would advise that, you know, if anything, just treat this as a difference of opinion. So when you're speaking to your followers, just please address them as this is a difference. That's all. You can say it's a minority difference, but just treat it like that. Don't treat it like, don't sectarianize it, because this has nothing to do with sects. Okay, so that's that. Right, the second thing isn't really okay. This is now a response to Shaykh Yasir al-Hanafi. Now, Shaykh Yasir al-Hanafi, on the contrary, who did a speech at As-Sufa. Now, I just want to begin by saying As-Sufa, which is Maulana Zahir, Shaykh Zahir's institute, I have great respect for. Okay. Now, once again, I don't know what's in people's hearts. I only go by what's apparent. Okay. So, people like Shaykh Zahir, Mufti Liaqat, Mufti Imran, these people I have in my heart, I have love and respect for, because from what I've seen from them so far is love and respect. And at the end of the day, even if we disagree on things, alhamdulillah, they, you know, from as far as I'm concerned, they are in a very respectable and dignified position in my eyes. You know, may Allah bless them. You know, they're doing great grassroots efforts. They teach people, you know, there's a lot of the homeless projects they've got going, feeding people. True Islam, which I think, and we disagree on things, and that's not a problem to me, but I'm just want to clarify that. Now, at their institute, Shaykh Yasir al-Hanafi, you know, Maulana Saab came down and gave a lecture. Maulana Saab, on the other hand, this Maulana Yasir Deobandi al-Hanafi, I don't know if he's really a true version of the Hanafi, but I mean, that's his. On the contrary, I don't really hold in a very respectable position. I used to, and I'm going to be honest. I have a policy that as long as you show me respect, I will not, you know, I only respond to people. Once they've openly disrespected me, I will then feel that it's fair game. As Maulana Yunus Nomani Sahab, one of my teachers, I would like to consider him, a great munazir debater from Pakistan. When he would come here, he'd stay at my friend's house, at Nav's house, and he used to say that, you know, hum logon ko nahi chhedte, that we don't pick on people, but jo hame chhedta hai, usko chhodte nahi. But whoever picks on us, we don't let that person go. So this Yasir al-Hanafi decided to pick on me. Now, I contacted him as well. He shared a lecture by Sheikh Dadu, the great Maliki Mauritanian scholar, who does, when it comes to beliefs, is Salafi inclined, and where he is doing takfir. It was a video aimed at Dr. Adnan Ibrahim from a few years back, saying anybody who denies the second coming of Jesus is a kafir. So Shaykh Yasir shared this, and I contacted him, and I said to him, Shaykh, I'm really kind of disappointed and hurt that, you know, that you shared this. And we had this kind of dialogue, and I said, look, okay, will you at least clarify, because you're implicitly encouraging Muslims to call other Muslims kafir. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? I mean, you know better than that, and you don't believe this yourself. You don't believe I'm a kafir for not believing in that. So why are you implicitly encouraging this? I said, would you at the least put on there a message when you share it? Would you put in your words, say that, look, although I'm sharing this for information, but I do not believe this and I do not encourage Muslims to call other Muslims kafir. Would you at least put that in? And he disagreed. He said no, like he wouldn't. He left it as it was. And he said to me, I'm sharing it for information. I said, Acha, shabash, huh? Information. I said, I don't see you sharing his videos where he says that you don't have to follow madhab. I said, I don't see you sharing his videos where he says women can go wearing makeup and stuff like this and they can take photographs. I don't see you sharing those for information. I don't see you sharing his videos on the Salafi Aqeedah for information. And now it's information just because I've taken this stance. I was like, cha. You know, this. So people like that, they've taken these open digs at me in tacitly saying it's okay to call me a kafir. So, okay. So with people like that, I have no respect for. I'm going to be honest. So people like that, I don't respect. So this is nothing to do with the institute where he delivered this. He delivered this at Sufa Institute, which I do have great respect for. And so for those people, you know, may Allah preserve them and bless them in their lives. But as to Shaykh Maulana Yasir Deobandi Al-Hanafi, then in the words of the Urdu poet Ahmad Faraz, who says that, you know, now let us try some different miracles through our poetry, huh? He says, Aur kuch karishme ghazal ke dekhte hain. Now let us try this poetry. Faraz, ab zara lehja badal ke dekhte hain. That, Faraz, let us change our tone a little. And then see what happens. So people like this, I have to say, I am so disappointed in his presentation. He said, I watched his presentation, and he says, okay, I'm not going to tackle any hadith. I'm not going to tackle any hadith. I'm going to prove unequivocally through the Quran alone that Jesus is coming back. Right, so Maulana Yasir Deobandi Sahab, first of all, I have to say, people, honestly, and this is not me taking a dig, this is just me being objective, that what has happened to the state, can we resurrect Jesus later on, but can we resurrect the English language and bring that back, please? Seriously, is this British-born scholarship? It's I think if nobody was arguing for the coming of Jesus except Maulana Yasir Deobandi Sahab, I think that was enough to even turn the Christians away from it. Boy, I mean, did you guys seriously watch it? I can't get over the fact that the level of English sounds like that. I mean, this is not me trying to take I'm being honest, that why? Like, at one point, Shaykh Yasir begins this lecture and he says, okay, so Allah took up Jesus, Christ, he took him up with his body, his jism, body, jism and ruh, body and jism. And he says, so the mas'ala is about killing body, it's about killing body. So what is the opposite of not killing body? What is the opposite of killing body? Tell me. So he says, what is the opposite of killing body? So the audience are like, I don't know, what's the opposite of killing body? He says, not killing body. What is the opposite of sleeping? It is not sleeping. What is the opposite of driving? It is not driving. Honestly, you couldn't make this stuff up, you know. You couldn't make it up. I'm being honest. This is British-born people. You know, after watching. So, I want to clarify And he brings all the verses of the Quran. I realized what the problem was with Maulvi Yasir Deobandi Sahab. The problem is, it's it's the word unequivocal. So people have printed that off from the dictionary.com. This is unequivocal. Right, so we're going to read through unequivocal. He said, I will be proving unequivocally. Right. So, unequivocal. This is from dictionary.com. Okay. Not equivocal. So far, I like this one, I like. Not equivocal. Unambiguous. Okay, unambiguous. Clear. Oh, having only one possible meaning or interpretation. Having only one possible. People, having only one possible meaning or interpretation. Ah. So the whole misunderstanding was on the word unequivocal. How can you prove this from the Quran unequivocally? How can you prove it when each one of those verses has several interpretations? Oh, yaar, seriously. Ye kya hai yaar? Ye Amar Akbar Anthony. Father Anthony Gonzalez. Ye kya hai Anthony Gonzalez? What's going on here? Unequivocal means it only has one clear understanding. Then he quotes all these verses. And the verses have multiple understandings. So he says, see, I proved it unequivocally. I'm thinking, I think we don't... Honestly, ya salam. Ya salam. Oh my God, I think even Christians watching that stopped believing in the second coming of Jesus Christ after that. That was hilarious. And then he said, oh, you know, he misquotes. And this is another thing, look. Why can't we just be honest as scholars? Why can't we just be honest? This is another problem. Like, we want to just insult and trick the crowd into thinking, like, look, I can tell you that let's say he uses a verse of the Quran. I'll be honest, I've said in the past, that's one understanding, but the other understanding is this. Why can't we just be honest? This is poor scholarship. So it comes to this verse of addressing Jesus, where the people said, كَيْفَ نُكَلِّمُ مَنْ كَانَ فِي الْمَهْدِ صَبِيًّا. How can we speak to somebody? And he says, oh, when he speaks to Asrar, Shaykh Asrar, he said, you know, he picks up on man kana. Kana was past tense. And then he says, this is Yasir Deobandi. He says, oh, who said kana is past tense? And he misquotes. Check this out. He says, I misquote Alusi. I don't misquote him. Now, yes, what you could have said, you see, now this is fair. Let's be fair. You could have said, right, what he could have said was, oh, his reading of Alusi is different. Like, I don't, you know, that's an interpretation of what Alusi is saying. That's a take on it. We've got a different take on it. He could say that, that's fine. But to say I'm misquoting, now why would you do that? Like, you see, you're just trying to gain credibility and discredit my authenticity. Now let's look. Here is in Ruh al-Ma'ani. Shaykh Alusi, the Hanafi, when speaking about this verb, or about this verse, man kan, kayfa nukallimu man kana fil mahdi sabiyya, first of all begins by saying, qala qatada, al-mahdu hijru ummihi. So, okay, what is a mahd? He starts explaining it. Then he says, wastashkalat al-ayah. Then the ayah brings about a problem. بأن كل من يكلمه الناس كان في المهد صبيا. قبل زمان تكليمه فلا يكون محلا للتعجب والإنكار. He says, okay, here the ayah presents a problem because everybody who was in the mahad, in the cradle as a young boy, you know, he says that, but everybody was like that. So why, what is the, like, you know, why are they saying that? Because everybody used to be like this. Then he brings Zamakhshari, a whole chunk of Zamakhshari's huge paragraph to answer this. And he says Zamakhshari answers this from two. This is what Alusi resorts to first. He brings 2 points from Zamakhshari to say kana, past tense here, can mean the near past. So okay, it's a past tense verb, but it's maybe he means like, oh, he was, as in it's not so long ago, like maybe within months, within, you know, like within the near past tense, as opposed to the distant past. He brings this, then he brings another angle. Then Alusi also brings Abu Ubaidah saying, what if the word kana was entirely extra? Then Alusi brings Zajjaj saying, okay, kana can also be a condition. What if we use this? Okay. But note the first and foremost thing that Alusi does is highlights the problem in saying this verse has presented a problem because kana is past tense. They're addressing him in the past tense. And what is the whole purpose of that? So, because why is that then such a thing? Because we all were children at one point. And then he brings Zamakhshari saying, justifying that it was the past tense, but maybe it was the near past tense. Okay. So, have I misquoted? Now, I could understand that he could say, okay, that's a, you know, I see what Mufti Abu Layth is doing here. He's taking this, but we understand here that although Alusi does bring that first as his first response to this problem, but we think maybe he took a more inclination to the second interpretation of saying this was extra. But to say I've lied, he goes, he lied. Look at that. He openly says, I lied. I haven't lied. I just read to you what he actually says. So this is poor scholarship. You see what I mean? Now, that is the problem. Now, okay, so this thing of, first up, and then he justifies it by saying kana comes in the Quran on many occasions to refer to things like this. And an example, he quotes Allah, as in he quotes verses to do with Allah. Now everybody knows Allah is not bound by time. Everybody knows that. So if you're going to say about Allah was, like imagine we use a verse to say Allah was all-seeing, then we know that Allah is all-seeing. Allah will be, because any time and place used with God has no restriction on God. Everybody knows that. But just look at what Mulvi Yasir Deobandi is doing. To justify Jesus, he's comparing him to God. I mean, that's exactly my point. That you are inheriting this from Christianity. That this kind of thing, that to justify that you can use kana, what he ought to have done is just said, look, Abu Ubaidah says this, let's go with that take, that kana is za'idah, it comes sometimes za'idah, that's fine. But to justify, he doesn't go into that. He justifies it by using the verses of the Quran that describe God. Which just proves my point further, that look, you are being misled. So that's, and then honestly, the rest of it was just appalling. He brings all these, he says, how can Allah, what is the purpose of Allah saying, we've raised Jesus? What is the purpose if there isn't this purpose? Many Mufassirin say that this was to do with, that is an interpretation. They accept that. Ibn Ashur goes through great lengths. Other Fakhruddin al-Razi, it goes to great lengths to say this is talking about his maqam, that his station is elevated. And then Maulvi Yasir al-Deobandi says, what's the point of that? Of mentioning maqam, and why would Allah mention about a prophet? Because all prophets have a great maqam. But Allah mentions it. Go to Surah Maryam. Allah says, وَذْكُرْ فِي الْكِتَابِ Idris. And remember Idris. He tells them, speak about Idris. That إِنَّهُ كَانَ صِدِّيقًا نَبِيًّا, that he was somebody so truthful and a Nabi. And Allah mentions, وَلَقَدْ رَفَعْنَاهُ وَرَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا. And we've raised him to an elevated maqam. Allah is speaking about a prophet there. It says, وَرَفَعْنَاهُ مَكَانًا عَلِيًّا. And that's actually in Surah Maryam. So look, so what is the... I don't understand. He goes, oh, this doesn't make any... This is... and there was a point where, to be honest, he says something like, Makri, and I didn't... I thought he was speaking about, there's a verse that is to do with Jesus, which says, Makar, or Makaru, and, you know, and Allah made their Makar, their plot, go to waste. Like, obviously, Allah's plot out kind of performed them. Now... But then I realized, oh, sorry, he was referring to the word mockery. He was saying mockery, this is mockery of the deen. And I thought he was talking about the mockery, this is to do with the plot. So I was trying to figure out his angle on it. Like, what does he mean about the plot thing? Then I realized, cha, he's saying the English word mockery. Yeah, one thing I didn't get in all of this is I would never have thought that the concept of the second coming of Jesus would have been taken up so passionately by the Mangetar group. No, that's no disrespect to the Mangetars, but I'm just saying that I don't understand why all of a sudden... So this thing... And then he uses the same verses, which I've already answered. All these things about Shubbiha lahum, that Jesus may have been killed like this. Just read Fakhruddin al-Razi. And then he says, this is the interesting thing. He says, look, يُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا. He will speak to them as a young boy, or in the cradle, and as a man. And he says, and Fakhruddin al-Razi says, the miracle of that is that he will come back. Fakhruddin al-Razi he mentions 3 different interpretations for that. And he says himself, we believed he reached Kahal in this dunya. And he says Kahal can be from 30. I mean, was he even listening to me? I actually said all of this already. How is this unequivocal? How is that unequivocal? Honestly, I'm lost for words, man. And then he goes on about the Qadiani thing. Let me clarify something here, people. This is very important. The Qadiani movement has only taken off because of this Messiah concept. Because of these people endorsing that a Messiah can come, that Qadiani managed to take off his movement. Did you know something? Let me kind of share something with you. There is a hadith of the Prophet where he said that he's the final messenger who comes at the end. وَلَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِي. And there will be no Nabi after me. The Prophet doesn't go on to speak about Jesus coming. He doesn't mention that Jesus will come. But he just says, I am the last prophet, there will be no prophet after me. Because many of these ulama bent over backwards to justify the second coming of Jesus, they had to justify this issue. That how can a prophet come after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So they said that Jesus will come as a Nabi, yes, because if you strip him of his Nabuwah, if you say he's not a Nabi, some of them tried that angle in saying he's not a Nabi. The problem with that is when he comes, he's going to change the Sharia. Like he's going to say, force people, he's going to change the jizya, no more jizya. He's going to say to people, either accept Islam or I'll kill you to the death. And he'll force people to become Muslim. Now that goes against the Prophet's teachings. So to do this, he has to be a Prophet. So they came up with a concept. They said he is a Nabi Ummati, or an Ummati Nabi. Now the interesting thing is, this Ummati Nabi concept that Jesus will come as is exactly what Qadiani then claimed. Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani. He said he was a Ummati Nabi because he said that Jesus had died a natural death, but the Jesus they're awaiting is him. So he is the awaited Jesus. These people paved the way for Qadianis to come. That the Qadiani movement is built on their arguments of Jesus coming. Except they said that Jesus the son of Mary has died, but the Jesus that you think is the son of Mary is actually Qadiani, who is a prophet. He's a Nabi Ummati. He's also part of the Ummah, but a Nabi. And do you know something? The founder of Deoband, right? Now, Maulana Qasim Nanotwi. Now, Qasim Nanotwi Sahab, who founded Deoband, he has a book called Tahdhirun Nas. Now, actually, what's interesting is Shaykh Asrar has a video on YouTube speaking about this. It's in one of his to do with Deobandi beliefs or something, like Deobandi beliefs or something. He's got a few videos, but one of them is addressing this. Now, he has a book called Tahdhirun Nas, which is to do with a hadith of Ibn Abbas, which is that there are many worlds like your worlds, and each world has an Adam, and each world has this, and each world has this, and they will have a prophet like your prophet. So people then said, well, what if a prophet comes after, like let's say on one of the other worlds, he comes after our prophet? Is our prophet still the final prophet? So now Maulana Qasim Nanotwi goes on to say that a prophet can come after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it doesn't negate him being the final prophet, because that prophet that comes after, and he also kind of ties in with the Jesus thing, that prophet will be like an Ummati Nabi. Okay. And and also in the other worlds it will be because he's kind of, he says coming before or after doesn't make a difference, but our prophet, he's the Khatamun Nabiyyin, but if a prophet comes after him, it doesn't affect him being the seal of the prophets. This is what Maulana Qasim Nanotwi writes. Now, based on this work, Maulana Ahmad Raza Khan Brilvi declared him a kafir. And he took his book to the Haramain and had all these ulama sign that he was a kafir. And this was his book called Husam al-Haramain. And this was the key beef that they had, part of the key beef with the Deobandis. They declared them kafir based on this belief, that you allowed prophets after the prophet, and there's ijma. And do you know this work and this writing and this quotation and ruling of Maulana Qasim Nanotwi, a Deobandi, has been quoted by Qadianis and justified. They used it to kind of justify their own, that Ghulam Mirza Ahmad Qadiani can come because he's an Ummati Nabi, and Maulana Qasim Nanotwi has even said that that's okay. So I don't see people like Yasir al-Deobandi attacking him. I don't see them problematizing his thing. I don't see them saying this is nonsense. But it's okay to say, oh, he said about me, I said that Jesus died on earth, and this is what Qadiani said. I don't care if Qadiani said it, that's coincidental. I told you that Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said it. Which is in Bukhari, I told you Imam Malik said it. Don't bring to me, oh, because Qadiani said it, like as though I've been influenced by him. I haven't. So, in fact, my whole thing, there is no Messiah. How can Ghulam Mirza Ahmad Qadiani be a Messiah when there is no Messiah in Islam? That the Mahdi means the rightly guided. Mahdi, the greatest of all rightly guided, has already come and been. And he was Muhammad, the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are not awaiting a Mahdi, a guided, after the greatest of all Mahdiyin, of the person who was guided, and that was the messenger of God who came for mankind. And you know this thing, he said, oh, that, he said, why not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or a different prophet? Why Jesus? Why Jesus? And he says, but look, Jesus had miracles that the Prophet didn't have. So this doesn't matter. You see, that's right? That is a red herring. I'm not saying, I never said that Jesus had to be identical with the Prophet Muhammad or Moses or Noah or Abraham. I never said that. So there's no point telling me, oh, Jesus had a different life. You know, what about this? He cured people who were sick. You know, he did this, or he brought back people from the dead and stuff like that. Where is the Prophet Muhammad? I never said that. There is a big difference between individual things and between who seals the deal. Who does, like the whole of mankind, who is sent for the whole of mankind, that everybody submits at his hands. They're arguing that's Jesus. That even the Prophet Muhammad in his life, only Arabia kind of came to him and embraced Islam, but the whole of mankind will submit to their knees at the hands of Jesus Christ. That's different to saying that claim is what I was speaking of. Not the fact that, oh, but Jesus lived here, the Prophet lived there. Oh, but why did Jesus get this? How come the Prophet never got that? I wasn't talking about these little things like this. I was saying this is a make or break. This is everything. Jesus wasn't even sent to he wasn't even sent to, you know, the human race as a whole. Even in Christianity, the debate between St. James and all these other people after Jesus was about this, and between St. Paul and so on, that do we take this to the Gentiles or do we keep this to the Jews? But the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sealed everything. He was sent that rahmatan lil alameen. Now to say that, yes, but at the end of time everybody will submit by force or by their own choice, but at the hands of Jesus Christ, who will judge over them. That is a problem. Yes, that's not me being petty over a little, you know, but Jesus got to do this, and how come the Prophet never got to do this, or Moses, you know, did this, and how come Abraham did this, and the Prophet. That's not being petty. Yeah, that's me being very realistic. So, yeah, so I think these things were very important. That was to kind of Yasir, Al-Hanafi, Deobandi, and this, you know, it disappointed me that the Deobandis, based on these kind of statements, have been called kuffar, kafir, by the Brelvis for decades and decades. Yeah, and I don't agree with calling people kafir. Okay, I disagree with that approach, but they have been called kafir for decades on end. Yeah, for some statements which I do find ridiculous. But I don't call them kafir. I do find the statements ridiculous, but I say, look, some of these statements, depends which statement, like this statement, I find it absurd. Now, the point is, now you should know better than to share things about calling other Muslims kafir. How can you encourage takfir of other Muslims? You know, you should know better than that. So, you know, this one, not nice, you know. Nutty. On one hand, you affirming Qadiani. On the other hand, you nutty. I want you to condemn Qasim Nanotwi Saab's thing. Condemn it. He's paving the way for Deobandi. I mean, sorry, of course, Deobandi. But paving the way for Qadianis. Condemn it as nonsense and absurd, and as like the kind of ridiculous statement that it is. Condemn it. Na'am. Then you can come and attack me and say, oh, maybe I'm saying certain things. This stuff, otherwise, this selective, oh, when it's your own, you turn a blind eye. Oh, don't worry. Acha, Hazrat, aap. नहीं. आपको तो 7 खून माफ हैं जनाब, 7 खून. There's a saying in Urdu about 7. You can murder up to 7 people, it's forgiven. Don't worry about it. Up, Huzur. Yeah, this one. And then, you know, you come in doing all these refutations of Father Gonzalez, Anthony Gonzalez. This is why, so in the words of Anthony Gonzalez, isn't it that same Anthony Gonzalez who says, father ko beta nahi, baap kehte hain, baap. So take that from me, huh? Rishte mein hum bhi tumhare baap lagte hain. Just as a nice, Layth, Abu Layth, you can take that. And so next time, before you decide to criticize me, why don't you look in your own backyard, start off with Qasim Nanotwi Sahab, condemn, rip his works to shreds, please, condemn these things, and then come to me. Don't worry about it. And also, please, Chalo, the other thing, the English language we have to work on, that, no wonder, seriously, no wonder there's Brexit, man. I think like these things, we really need to up our game as the scholars and stuff like this, because this one not nice, we born raised here, this one we need to be like here, otherwise this one mockery, mockery, this is is mockery of the British values, the English language. All right, god damn, man, this has been so that one was unequivocally mockery. I tell you, this one unequivocal mockery. So my brothers, inshallah, I think I'll leave that to there. Other than that, of course, to Maulvi Yasir, by the way, other than that, if you show respect, then there's much love your way, if you show respect. But that was your respect to me, saying it's okay to call me a kafir. So that was just fair game then. Right, people, should we wrap that up? Some serious, shall we say a few serious words? I think it's time to be serious, people. Yeah. I think it's time to have a serious conversation now. Right, so right, I want to answer a question. Somebody has asked me this. It is actually way past my time, but I'll try to get through this quickly. Somebody has asked me, are you influenced by Muhammad Abduh and Rashid Rida? So this is a bit of a serious one, people. So I need to be serious on this. Am I influenced by... I want to turn up to a debate with this. Seriously, just think about it, people. I'll be in a debate like this. Keep a straight face. Naam. Naam. La. La. La ya Maulana. La. Honest, that would be awesome. That would be like a dream. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that in the future at some point. Right, so... Okay, so now... right, somebody has asked me, have I been influenced by Rashid Rida, Shaykh Rashid Rida and Shaykh Muhammad Abduh? Look, I haven't. I don't actually know too much about these scholars. Shaykh Asrar mentioned the same thing. First of all, I want to highlight something. Part of what a lot of the clergy Maulanas do is they want to, you see, when they want to disagree with you, they want to discredit you. So they start off by thinking, okay, divide and conquer. So he's part of the Maliki thing. Now the Maliki thing is a legitimate kind of legacy within Islam. If we attack the Maliki thing, is too much. So let's dissociate him with the Maliki Fiqh to start off with. Let's link him to some modern day kind of scholars, and then we can kind of attack them, because a lot of people don't like them anyway. The truth is, look, I do have respect. I have great respect for people like Shaykh Muhammad Abduh, Shaykh Rashid Rida. But the truth is, I haven't actually studied much of their stuff. I haven't actually read their thing. I've read some things over time, like sometimes I've come across opinions and I've read stuff, but not generally. I've read very little from Muhammad Abduh or Musa or Rashid Rida. I don't even have his tafsir al-Manar. And in fact, when I spoke of him recently, I actually made a mistake. When I was speaking of his visit to Deoband in my recent video, I quoted him as Shaykh al-Azhar. I thought he used to be the Shaykh al-Azhar. Somebody actually messaged me and told me that, by the way, you know, Mufti, you quoted Shaykh Rashid Rida as the Shaykh al-Azhar, and that's actually wrong. He wasn't the Shaykh al-Azhar. And so I googled it, and he wasn't the Shaykh al-Azhar. Shaykh Muhammad Abduh was the Grand Mufti of Egypt, and he was his student. So I was wrong on that fact. I mean, on the trip happened as it did, and the rest was correct. But where I assumed that he was the Shaykh al-Azhar, he wasn't. Now that in itself goes to show that I didn't actually know too much about him. Like I didn't, and this is only recently, this is like only 2 weeks ago. So I haven't been influenced by them in that sense. I am my thinking has been, obviously one, it's me, my thinking, but my understanding of Islam rests within the school of Medina. Now people say, yeah, but you're too liberal, you're too kind of modern. Modern is my own day and age, but they say you're thinking. So I thought, look, let me run you through some things to show you an understanding. Let's take a look at Imam Malik. Yeah. Now this is the Maliki school, the school of Medina. Now I'm going to run you through some kind of thinking. Then you tell me, how different am I, really, apart from the fact I'm in a different day and age? See, Imam Malik, beginning with, like, let's say the hadith of the dogs, and when it comes to lick the bowl, rejects this hadith, said it didn't make sense. There's a hadith in the Muwatta of when two people transact, that they still have a choice. Imam Malik rejected the hadith because it could compromise certain values. Because if you've bought a purchase, now if you're still there, the person could change his mind, take it back, sell it to somebody else for a better price. So the hadith is in the Muwatta. Imam Malik rejected it. Imam Malik himself said, taking a hadith one-on-one, Khabru Ahad, will snatch the deen from in front of you. Imam Malik said that. Okay. Imam Malik, when he was speaking about currency in his time, he said, if they start dealing in leather, that will become currency. Imam Malik saying this. Imam Malik, when he was asked about people practicing incest, he said, if that's their way of life, that's we do, and we've got control over them. He said, we don't get him. Now check, I'll actually read that to you guys, because in the past people said to me I was lying. This is the Mudawwana Fatawa of Imam Malik. Now Imam Malik is asked in this, they say, أرأيت أهل الذمة إذا كانوا يستحلون في دينهم نكاح الأمهات والأخوات وبنات الأخ أيخليهم وذلك. So the person, Ibn al-Qasim says, I asked him, the people of Dhimma, he doesn't say Majus, he says the Dhimma, the non-Muslims living in our midst, under Islamic rule. He says, if they think it's fine in deen, and remember deen means also their way of life, that they can marry their mothers and sisters and nieces, do we leave them and doing things like that? He said, قال أرى أنه لا يعرض لهم في دينهم. He said, we do not engage them in their way of life. وهم على ما أوهدوا عليه فلا يمنعون من ذلك. They have their kind of covenant. We do not prevent them from committing incest even. We do not prevent them, Imam Malik said. He said, إذا كان ذلك مما يستحلونه في دينهم. If that is something they see as permitted in their way of life. And then he says, and I learnt this from Rabi'atul Ra'i's teacher, who used to say that Allah has taught us to be more tolerant of greater theological issues, the fact that they worship other gods and things like this. So, to tolerate incest, homosexuality I think is much less than things like that, but incest, which in most communities is a taboo, right? Imam Malik said, we do not prevent them. Where we have force to prevent them, we do not prevent them. Right. Imam Malik, when he was asked about going in a bathroom, in his time by bathroom, I mean toilet, can you do dhikr in a toilet? Can you mention Allah's name? Said, yeah, you can mention Allah's name. Right. Now, wow, like people were kind of shocked. Imam Malik was asked, what if you've got a ring on and the ring has, and I actually disagree with this personally, this ruling, but it has Allah written on it. Do you have to remove it when going to the toilet because you're going to be washing yourself and stuff? Imam Malik said no. Imam Malik was asked, when you're doing wudu and you've got a ring on, do you have to remove the ring? He said no. They said, what if it's tight? Like water doesn't even get underneath. He said no. It's Imam Malik, people. Imam Malik himself, right, when he was asked about things like, in his day and age, right, a Muslim could offer safety to all, to any non-Muslim. A man could do this. Most scholars accept this. They call it giving dhimma, giving aman. Imam Malik said a woman can do it as well, a boy could do it, and a girl can do it. Scholars said that nobody before Imam Malik was being that open, extending this. Imam Malik did it. The hadith said that, oh, you sacrifice, if a boy is born, you sacrifice 2 sheep. If a girl is born, you sacrifice 1 sheep. Imam Malik rejected it. He said, no, there's no difference between a boy and a girl. You sacrifice 1 sheep for either. Imam Malik did this, right? Imam Malik himself, he became fed up in his riwayah, he became fed up of people. People say, oh, look, the way you do things and stuff like this is not religious. 25 years of his final part of his life, he didn't attend the masjid. He didn't used to go to the masjid to pray. Right? Where he's Imam Malik at the end of the day. Right? Now, and I know Imam Malik said, based on maslahah, welfare, if you, and I don't agree with this ruling, but he said, oh, if you caught somebody that was a suspect and you knew that this person was responsible, he said that he felt it was permissible to beat that person to investigate, beat him up. You think, because he said the day and age was like this, so you got to change with the day and age. I disagree with that ruling, obviously, but I'm just saying, look, Imam Malik, okay. Imam Malik, the famous, you know, people say, oh, you say all these things permissible about sexual stuff and everything. And they said, they made this big deal about me quoting that the anal sex issue. And I never said that I'm promoting it. I was just quoting the diversity. Who said that I was permissible? Imam Malik. Imam Malik actually said that there's nothing haram about it. In his transmission, people said, oh, the utbiyah is unreliable. Really? That's why Ibn Rushd, the great legend, does a commentary on it in 22 volumes today. He said it took him 20 to 30 years to do a commentary. Why would he do a commentary on a book that is unacceptable? And many other people said it was one of the most authentic, one of the most relied upon texts. This is Imam Malik's thinking. This thing about people said, oh, you know, these kind of issues. Now that's a misquote from Imam Malik. One of the great Malikis, Ibn Sha'ban, early Malikis, one of his books, the Az-Zahi and his Mukhtasar ma laysa fil Mukhtasar, are considered from the Ummahat of the Madhab, the great books of the Madhab. Now, early on, he's like from the students of Malik. He wrote a whole book in defense in his time for things like anal sex. A key person of the Madhab. Ibn Arabi quotes it in his when he's discussing it in his commentary on hadith, that Ibn Sha'ban wrote that book. He's a Maliki. You've got people like Abu Muhammad al-Asili, who the great muhaddith of Al-Andalus over 1,000 years ago, said it was permissible. Sorry, it wasn't haram, it was makruh, maybe disliked. Ashhab, the student of Malik. Now, what I'm trying to say is, people say to me, for discussing things, how can you be Malik? These people, am I not quoting Malikis to you? And I apologize if this part is coming across a bit kind of whoa, but people say, oh, one of the first people to speak about oral sex in the Islamic tradition was who? Asbagh ibn Asbagh, the student who was around in Imam Malik's time and the student of Imam Malik. To the extent when Hanafis and other people started saying, oh, when a couple are together, you can't even look at the private parts of your partner because it might make you blind and stuff like this. To take away metaphor, his actual wording was what? He said that يَجُوزُ لَهُ أَن يَلْحَسَهُ بِلِسَانِهِ. He can, I mean, sorry to be, vulgar, but this is, I suppose, la haya fi din. There's no haya in the matters of deen. That he said he can lick it with his tongue, like just to show. This is going over 1200. Great Maliki of his time. They said that he was like the whole madhab relied on him in his age, and he's from the students of the student of Maliki. Yeah, and you condemn me for being different, for saying certain things. When Asad ibn al-Furat, the student of Imam Malik, who was responsible for the creation of this book, Mudawwana, when he was asked by his ruler, the Amir, who wanted in that day and age, the golden age when they had all the concubines, he wanted to take several of his concubines into the steam room with him, their kind of hammam. He gave the fatwa that it was permissible. Asad ibn al-Furat, the great Maliki Asad ibn al-Furat. And you guys criticize, and I'm just saying these kind of things that, people say, this Mufti is coming up with all these things. Nobody had said this before. Ibn al-Majishun, the student of Imam Malik, they asked him, can you, if a person, I'm sorry if these things are coming off like this, but when they asked him, if a person has many wives or many concubines, can you sleep with them all together? Even if it's not sexual, but what I mean is, but they're all together in one. Ibn al-Majishun said, yes, there's no problem with things like this. And they criticize, they're saying, I'm coming up with a modern kind of thought. You see? Now, what about Ibn Habib and Al-Lakhmi, when discussing the matter of somebody who gets married? They say if it's newly married, for 7 days he doesn't even leave his property. From Ibn Habib they transmit, he doesn't even go to pray, like he can pray at home, he prays whatever. They say he doesn't la yakhruj, doesn't go out for Jummah, he just stays with his intense passion. That's all it should be. But the thing is, this is from Lakhmi, they transmitted from Ibn Habib that he doesn't do this. What about the fatwa when they said a woman, a bride who because she's done up her hair, right? Al-Lakhmi transmits this, and other ulama, that she doesn't need to wash her hair for up to 7 days when she's doing ghusl, because it's going to waste money on the hair. These are Maliki legends, and they're saying my being lenient is modern. This is what they try to come up with. When it came to matters of music, Ibn al-Arabi, Al-Qadi Abu Bakr Ibn al-Arabi says, there's nothing I find in the Quran or Sunnah that says it's haram. From 900 years ago, from Muslim Spain. Ibn Abdul Rabbi, once again a faqih, Maliki Fiqh from Spain. You've got people like Muhammad ibn Abi Isa, who was the key judge of an entire region from Muslim Spain, Maliki, said music was absolutely permitted. The Qadi from Muslim Spain, Muhammad ibn Ishaq ibn Salim. These people, and they're saying that I'm different, I'm not from this tradition. How different am I in my thinking? Ibn Abi Zayd wrote a book in his time saying that the awliya don't do karamat. The whole world went mad at him. And then they say, he kind of took it back because people create all this emotional blackmail, all this stress. Baqilani, they say he did something like that. In fact, Ibn Battal, who is around the same kind of time just after, from Muslim Spain, the great Maliki, has his commentary on Bukhari. He does inkar of karamat like that. He says karamat, these miracles can only happen within worldly means. How different am I ask you? In the hadith in Bukhari, when they say water came out of the Prophet's hands, Anas transmits this from Hudaybiyah. Ibn Battal says that this is gharib. He says this hadith doesn't really add up, or it's not really that reliable, because why would only one person from Hudaybiyah transmit this when there's over 100 people there? Why is only one person, Anas radiallahu anh, saying this? He's from over 1,000 years ago. Ibn Battal, the great Maliki. How different am I? I ask you, these things, when people say, he follows different opinions, he does these things. Shaykh Ghabrini, great Maliki, who's known, by the way, as a muhaqqiq, says, I asked my teachers that every opinion a scholar has in the madhab, does that become an opinion within the madhab? Or is that separate? And he says, I went to one scholar who says, no, you can't take different opinions within them. They're different opinions, but the madhab doesn't have that. He says, then I went to my teacher, Abul Qasim ibn Zaytun, who's a great Maliki of his time. And he said, yes, every qawl of every Maliki scholar in the madhab is a qawl within the madhab of Imam Malik. How different am I ask you? This is what, if you go to YouTube and watch Sheikh Muhammad Rugi, one of the leading Maliki dons in the world today, on he's giving a lesson in Morocco, and I was there at that time, at his lesson, and then went to his home with him afterwards. He's covering Bidayatul Mujtahid. He was the Grand Sheikh of the Qarawiyyin. He says in that lecture, he says every qawl, the qawl of Ibn Rushd is a qawl in the madhab. How different am I ask you? Right now, when people say, oh, things like, oh, he's lenient on prayers, Taraweeh, look at people like Lakhmi, Abul Hasan al-Lakhmi, who, by the way, people, the Malikis quote Khalil. The first person Khalil relies upon for his interpretation of the Mudawwana in his Mukhtasar is Lakhmi. And he's the teacher of Mazri. People say Imam Mazri never disagreed with the madhab. That may be, but his teacher was Abul Hasan al-Lakhmi, who disagreed so much that the poet said, he said to the girl, he said, لَقَدْ هَتَكَتْ قَلْبِي سِهَامُ جُفُونَكِ, that you're kind of, the arrows of your eyes have shredded my heart. Like he says to this girl, كَمَا هَتَكَ اللَّخْمِ مَذْهَبَ مَالِكِ, and the way Lakhmi has ripped the Maliki madhab to shreds. And he has his famous book called the Tabsira. And right, you can't see it here, but there it is. It's on that shelf. It's that whole, all those books you can see there, those volumes. That's his Tabsira. Now, by the way, he gave a fatwa. I'm not saying I agree with it. Lakhmi gave the fatwa that if based on maslaha, welfare, if a ship was sinking, you could chuck off 1/3 to save 2/3. Modern for its age, yeah. And he's from about 1,000 years ago. That's crazy, that fatwa is. He said based on the welfare, what the hell? I mean, I would go with it as long as I'm within the 2/3 and not the 1/3. So how different am I? You know, when you say, oh, he's modern, he's thinking, is that not modern for its time? Thinking like that? Lakhmi said that, oh, when it comes to tayammum, if you do tayammum, your hadith goes away. You don't need to repeat wudu and ghusl later on. People say there's ijma and stuff like this. Lakhmi said no. How different am I? Like I ask you, like, you know, you say, oh, these things. When it came to Abul Qasim al-Burzuli, he said that the hudud, the cutting of the hand, the stoning, all this should change in his day and age. He was like 600 years ago. He said it should change to financial penalties. He was thinking in time, modern for his day and age. How different am I? How liberal am I then, if you want to use the word liberal? Ibn Ardun al-Kabir, who comes after him, a few generations after him, he says women should now inherit, like the wife should inherit 50% of everything before you split. So I ask you, how different is my thinking? You know, you're saying I'm not part of. Ibn Rushd, the great philosopher, he said that the greatest thing that Allah has given humans is aql, is reason. The greatest thing they've given. And he said Allah in his book Fasl al-Maqal would never give insan aql and then give him a sharia that goes against the aql. That's the words of Ibn Rushd. So, how different am I? He criticized the Ash'aris on several points in this creed that they had on certain things. He said this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense. How different am I? He said that insan in essence is consciousness. He said that he feels that the consciousness was the main thing and everything. How different? I mean, how am I so modern and so different? This was Ibn Rushd, the great, who wrote the Bidayatul Mujtahid. You know, you got people like Ibn Arabi, Qadi Abu Bakr Ibn Arabi, who in his time said that the Christians in Europe used to just wring the neck of chickens. He said that it was halal to eat. And today, all these people that base their fatwa on Ibn Arabi, the Maliki, he said that because the Christians see it as okay in their deen, so it should be okay in my deen. So my way of thinking, how is it so different? That is he not thinking modern for his age, saying, well, the Christians do that today, so what the hell, you know, so it should be okay. Now, I'm not trying to say whether I agree with all these things or disagree, but the fact that they're being relevant with their age. When Muslims were being persecuted in Spain after Ferdinand and Isabella took over, and Wahran gave the fatwa that they don't need to migrate, that they can just pray with ishara, they can just look, and if they can't do tayammum, they can just look at a wall, and if they can eat ham, and they can do all these things, and they can marry non-Muslims. He said they weren't obliged to migrate. How is that thinking not modern and mine only modern? How is that not liberal and only I'm liberal? You see, the scholars sealed off the Sharia with this part of this Aqeedah talk, because there's this whole discussion on, is X good because God commanded it, or did God command X because it's good? It's the classical debate called the divine commandment theory. Now the scholars got caught up in it, and they gave the ruling, the Ash'aris and all, that there is no such thing as good. That only whatever God said, therefore it's good. Then they realized down the road that they kind of like, this is a bit of a uh-oh. Because now killing isn't really bad, it's only bad because Allah said it. So the Malikis kind of, right, the Malikis here kind of did istidrak. They kind of caught onto it, like tried to fix the situation and salvage it by opening up the whole discussion on maqasid, objectives of the Sharia. The Malikiyah introduced this. Imam Shatibi, they really is expansive work. Al-Allal al-Fasi, Ibn Ashur, these are the people who wrote on maqasid, that you can turn away from certain rulings based on maslahah. So how am I so liberal, and how am I so disconnected from this legacy when you think about it? When the Malikis, when they were asked things like, people say making things easy, if a woman had irregular cycles or irregular bleeding, the Malikiyah, the Iraqiyin said that doesn't even break her wudu. Doesn't even break her wudu. Like, how was that not making ease? The Iraqiyin used to say, by the way, it's one of their principles that Khabrul Ahad is rejected if it goes against reason or the established principles, if it goes against qiyas or the qawaid. This was the Iraqiyin, the whole school within the Malikiyah. When it came to a woman traveling on her own, Abul Walid al-Baji said that 1,000 years ago she could travel on her own if she goes in a caravan, it's fine. How is my way of thinking so modern all of a sudden? And theirs wasn't, for their day and age. When the Malikiyah said that a woman can pluck her eyebrows even if it comes in the hadith, they said that's talking about a woman in her iddah. She can do that. When Qarafi and Ibn Zayyat argue for how can tattoos be haram, they say tattoos, we don't think they're haram. These are all Malikis I'm quoting to you. How is my thinking really so different? When Ad-Dardir and the Suqi and these people write in their books, this is their main, the mashhur of the madhab, they write wearing a niqab is ghulu, extremism. They say fi salah or fi ghayriha, whether it's in salah or outside salah. How is that so different from my way of thinking? And this, and even Shaykh Ahmed Taha Rayyan has the same thing on YouTube saying that. Now my point is that this, I'm trying to show, Ibn Ashur writes this about miracles. People say, oh, his way of thinking about miracles. He writes about the moon splitting. I've gone over that, saying this doesn't mean the moon actually split. He writes about it, and he problematizes the second coming of Jesus, by the way. And these people that wrote an article, they misquoted him. Absolutely. He says every time he mentions anything to do with Jesus, if you were to take this literally and believe it, but he problematizes the second coming of Jesus. And these other things. And he says like, oh, miracles, like he always explains them. And people say, well, oh, you know, and he did all these things. He says that jinn can't possess people. There's no such thing as magic. This is Maliki ulama I'm quoting to you. But people will try to dissociate me from them to make me a soft target. So, oh, he's isolated. He's with Muhammad Abduh. Why? I'm telling you these people. I'm quoting them to you. Right? So, And look, to the extent Ibn Ashur went to the extent to even say about mut'ah, and I spoke about that. Shaykh Ju'ayyid, who went to the extent to say about organ donation and stuff like this is permissible. So why am I highlighting all of these things? I'm highlighting them to show that, look, this tradition, especially the Maliki school, it's had this huge thing of basing things on welfare, on being of the time. Yes, and there's been many people in there that sometimes haven't been like that. I accept that. There's been kind of dogmatists and people like that. I accept that. But all these people are examples who in their day and age were seen as being modern for their day and age. Because that's what Islam teaches us. And people say, reason. Whose reason? Whose reason? I want to elaborate on this later on in another session, but the question is, tell me, when you look at things like the story of Hinduism, you look at stories of Ganesh, his head being cut off and an elephant head being put on, or the story of Hanuman, who they call Lord Hanuman, the monkey god who flies across into what is modern day Sri Lanka, saves Sita and stuff like this, the whole poem, the whole story to do with Ram and Sita and Hanuman. Do you find that absurd, or do you just find it, I don't believe in it, but it still makes sense? And if I ask you, you find it absurd, why? And if you say, yeah, but it doesn't add up, say, why doesn't it add up? You say, yeah, because it doesn't add up to reason. Oh, whose reason? Exactly. Reason is the ability of a healthy mind to make judgment based on practical evidences. And it doesn't add up. I could say, yeah, but you'll say, yeah, but monkeys don't fly across and do things like this. I say, yeah, but God suspended the laws of nature. You say, you could suspend it for a tree. If you believe in trees doing things, why can't he suspend it for a monkey? Monkeys are more capable than trees. Why is Ganesh having an elephant head so strange when trees doing things are not strange? Why? Can't God suspend the laws of nature for a minute here? He can suspend it for you. Why can't he suspend it for them? Exactly. It sounds stupid now, doesn't it? It sounds like, oh, yeah, but for them they can't do it, but for us. It's like, so this is my point. When you say reason, the same reason that you apply to debunking Hinduism for being absurd, certain parts of it. And I think this whole thing, you see, it's not that. The point is, when Allah addresses miracles in the Quran, it's important to understand, because a lot of people have been asking me this. It's not that whether the miracles are false. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what are the asbab? What is the reality? What were the causes? That do you believe this happened just out of thin air like this? Or were there natural causes to this? And you have to remember the truth, how you tell the truth. So sometimes Allah isn't trying to teach you science in the Quran. So he sometimes is telling a narrative, and it's not important to get all the detail there. And I think there was a beautiful, part of a beautiful discussion I had with Hanif, who came to visit me the other day, and he highlighted some verses in the Quran when Allah first addresses Musa, and brings this up in 2 surahs in the Quran at least, in Surah Qasas, Surah Taha, that when Musa comes to the fire, Allah says, Innani ana Allahu. Indeed, I am Allah. That fa'budni wa aqimis salata li dhikri, that pray and establish the prayer and so on and worship me. And in another verse, he says when Musa came to the fire, Allah says, Inni ana Allahu Rabbul Alameen. Not innani ana Allah. So tell me, Allah couldn't have said both of them at the same time, because they're both the introductory kind of. So you could kind of say this or this or this. Or was Allah explaining the event as opposed to everything being literal? See, truth is taken in layers. Tell me, when you're speaking to a child and a child asks you, where do babies come from? And people say, oh, the stork brings them. Are they lying to the children? They're lying like, I'm lying to this child. I'm lying to you. Or if they say babies come from hospitals, are they lying to the child? Or even when they get older and they say baby is come from the mother's tummy, are they lying? Because technically they don't come from the tummy. But it's that they are addressing them with frames of references that they will understand. Now this is important. And actually, since we've spoken about Hinduism, there's an amazing, I actually like this quote from the Vedas, which is actually said that the truth is one. The sages speak of it by many names. That is, to me, that is amazing. Like Allah is not trying to teach you science in the Quran. When He mentioned certain things, it was just part of a story. Now, how did it happen? What was the thing? What was that? Of course there were causes. Of course it happened within asbab. It has to be able to fit in with reason. Otherwise, you have to then accept all these other claims. Because if you accept your rules here as we don't need reason, then why is having a monkey god that flies over and saves Sita absurd? Because God suspended the laws of nature. He allowed Hanuman all of a sudden to become conscious and go and save Sita. He allowed him to have an elephant head, Ganesh. So I think this, inshallah, I hope it shed some light, people. I went on over an hour longer than I wanted to. I hope it's been of some help. Do, inshallah, reach out to me. Like, share, the usual, inshallah. It's been, as always, awesome. I've had a hell of a day and a lot to still do yet. So, people, I'm going to leave you to it, inshallah. And as people often say to me, look, the only problem is you're not serious enough. Then to all of you guys, here I am, very serious. Guys, take very good care of yourselves, inshallah. Stay awesome, stay laughing, stay blessed, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.